Okay, so I was wrong about my reasons for us falling out. Of love I want to fall back in. My life is different now, I swear. I know now what it means to care about somebody other than myself. I know the things I said to you, they were untender and untrue. I'd like to see those things undo. So if you could find it in your heart to give a man a second start, I promise things won't end the same. Shame, boatloads of shame, day after day, more of the same. Blame, please lift it off. Please take it off. Please make it stop. Okay, so I have read the mail, the stories people often tell about us that we never knew. But their existence will float away, and just like every word they say, and we will hold hands as they fade. Shame, boatloads of shame, day after day, more of the same. Blame, please lift it off. Please take it off. Please make it stop. I felt so sure of everything, my love to you so well received, and I just strutted around your town, knowing I didn't let you down. The truth be known, the truth be told, my heart was always fairly cold, posing to be as warm as yours, my way of getting in your world. But now I'm out and I've had time to look around and think and sink into another world that's filled with guilt and overwhelming shame. Boatloads of shame, day after day, more of the same. Blame, please lift it off. Please take it off. Please make it stop. And everyone, they have a heart, and when they break and fall apart, they need somebody's helping hand. I used to say, just let 'em fall, it wouldn't bother me at all. I couldn't help then, now I can.
Tree, I will be free and shining like before. Papa, don't tell me what I should have done. She's the one who picked me. Take me. Take me home. When the his hand. I will swing free until they cut me down. Papa, don't tell me what I could have done. She's the one who begged me. Take me. Take me home.
Howdy. Oh, fuck, Warudo.
Boruto. Oh no. Wait, no.
But, no, wait, but I can't.
Send me an invite. Send me an invite. Send me an invite.
Shit. Everything's fucked.
Person, thanks for the alert.
Nobody witness anything going on for the next second. Just wait for the game to load.
Okay. Cap and just off speed. Absolutely. How is everyone this morning? We're here. We were prepared. We totally weren't fucking off in DC.
We were not fucking off at all. We didn't have all the time in the world to be prepared and weren't. That would be crazy.
We were too busy with Spotify playlists.
We did this. We are listening to me and Captain's Fuse taste right now. So
Yeah.
if anyone complains, I ban them forever. Forever and a day. Okay, I sent you an invite.
Yep, it says waiting for host to accept your request to join.
I knew that. I totally knew that.
Now you can do Boruto.
Yippee, 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 yippee. She's the one who pegged me.
Okay, how is everybody this morning?
Oh my god, I'm so good. Thank you for asking.
W. Caffeine is still like working its magic. I'm gonna go ahead.
I have just poured myself some caffeine. Go ahead and guess whose.
Cottontails.
Yeah, whose milky cum caffeine is filling my lungs? Not lungs. don't breathe the gamer subs. I cannot recommend it.
Do not the gamer subs.
Do not. We're in rare form this day. Think this is the day of
we're
TPK?
here. I don't know. I have faith in us.
What extra boss battles do we still got? We have Little John and the city battle.
Little John.
He's the big fuck off stone elemental thing.
I don't think we made that far.
We definitely did. You'll recognize him when you see him.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, maybe for a few. We are professionals. I
So, professional streamers.
swear. Streamer. Brain bamblage.
I'm waiting for my tracking to track.
Oh, yeah.
For now, I'm staring blankly. I don't like the auto blink. I accidentally turned it on.
Everything is back as it should be. I'm able to, like, push you great distances now. It's so hard to give up a strength-based character. I do it in a lot of my RPGs.
Yeah, now I'm the strong one.
I only have to hit you once, Dex Nerd.
There's nothing I love more than shouting dodge tank and then getting turned into dust. I can tank, I just won't get hit. Fucking obliterated.
I have to change my fan map because I see my GPU is hanging.
I'm gonna restart Warudo. For some reason it won't track.
Oh no.
We love
that-
technical
that's how it
issues.
happens.
We
That's how it
love...
If no scuff is VTuber.
Is VTuber? I think not. Also, do you have any sweet snacks on you right now? I bought myself some sour Skittles.
These are trolley sour gummy worms.
Yes, those are the better. Those are the good ones.
I love sour gummy worms.
You know, a very common trait of ADHD people is loving sour taste.
Yeah.
I don't know how legit that information is, but I heard it on the internet. And who would just go on the internet and lie?
Yeah, the internet's never wrong.
Ah!
Impossible. It couldn't be wrong.
Emery, it's not my fault people are here second, first. That's a weird sentence to say.
Oh, by the way, Delta, congratulations on getting third. We will get first and second, time will go.
Oh, shit.
You okay?
Nothing. I'm fine.
Is everything okay, baby girl?
I'm coming over to your stream.
Oh, okay.
I was first. I was here first.
Emmy, good job on getting my race.
Oh, fuck, I should have stolen second in your stream. That would have been fucking hysterical. Damn. You know?
Well, good job on getting first. I always make sure you get first. Anyway.
I'm turning off Boruto. It's Fugi Day. It's the day of Fugi.
Day? Hey, Marie.
I don't know why it's fighting me.
It's working. Thank you.
Oh god, a person! Hi.
Person's really cool.
Person's really cool.
We played Tarkov till 2 a.m. last night.
That's what you were doing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I wasn't up just for the sake of being up. I was also being a DJ.
We fucking love that. And watching dinosaurs.
Oh yeah. And dinosaurs.
Warming signs.
You got your foodie swapped over?
I've got everything swapped over. You want to play some video games?
Yeah, let's play some video games.
Oh, I'm stretching. I'm stretched out.
Chat, you stretching?
Yeah. Anyway. Wait, no. I'm not ready. I lied. I lied to you, Captain.
What did you do?
I didn't set up my box.
Your box?
My box. My magic box. Okay, it's all set up.
Damn it.
Hey, leave me alone. You stay the hell away from me.
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. No. No. I don't have to be raging.
I don't have to be raging to fucking hit you.
Yeah, I don't have to be raging for this to hurt.
I like that your eyes are fucking blood red. Hold on. Fuck, I tried to push you. Must take a short rest. Oh yeah, they neutered fucking Mage Hand because people were using it to absolutely decimate.
They ripped that shit to shreds.
Which is crazy because you only had to make it so that you can only have one Mage Hand out at a time.
Yeah.
They already have that with spiritual weapons, so I know they can have done that.
Yeah, you think it'd be that easy.
But oh well. Who am I to bitch about a game I love? Oh right, that's my favorite thing to do with a game I love.
Yeah, when you love something this much, you're bound to bitch about something.
Mm-hmm.
Here goes nothing.
Larian Studios could spit in my mouth and I would bitch about it, but I'd like it on the inside.
I'm learning things. No, I'm not.
Are we? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
Where are we going is an excellent question. What have we...
Yeah, Emmy's got a point. Like, that's fine. And then Matt Mercer shows up with a stack of boxes a mile high.
Yeah. And he's like, hey guys, can you fix this? And they're like, I don't fucking know how you did it. Did you see that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was like, I'm gonna try and break this just like my players break shit. And he did. And he
fucking did it. I think he said while he was doing it, he used to be a games tester. That was his job for a little bit.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Learn something new.
Which is the kind of nerd shit that you'd expect from him. Okay,
Yeah.
we did clear this town.
We did. We also cleared everything up to the, we've done the mud methods. We did not, do anything about, like, the totally, like, authentic and real sheep.
I mean...
We could go the other direction and start getting Karlak, though.
Ooh, true. There's still a part of me that's like, do I want to switch out Lae'zel for Karlak? I don't know.
2 barbarians on the field.
Double barb?
Double barb?
Double barb, triple threat?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go grab
I
her.
fuck with it.
We could fight the
Yeah.
gnolls too. They're occasionally quite scary, but I think we could do it.
Oh, yeah, the gnolls are... No, we can do it.
I'm
So
just
why are we going
gonna...
this way?
I don't know. I just like clicking things.
Come here, girl. I'll lead.
I was
I'll take
gonna
the lead.
fast travel to the environs.
That would make the walk further.
Oh, I'm dumb.
Follow me, BB girl.
Okay.
I will take the lead.
He was a beta tester while looking for acting work before moving to LA. Yeah, exactly. Damn, Emery's a real fan.
Well, what the hell are we?
I don't know. How much Critical Role have you watched?
Not near as much as others, more than the average.
Fair. Fair,
Oh, have
fair
I-
and same, actually, is
Have
how I
I-
would describe it.
Have I watched a campaign? Oh god, I hate this. Anyway, have I watched a campaign all the way through from start to finish? No. Have I seen a significant chunk of all the campaigns? Yes.
Ah, see, I'm the opposite. I love doing things fully. I love taking it all in, full, you know, the whole girth, the full shaft.
That might be worth a look.
Ooh, a hole.
No use
But-
digging here.
I only got through 1 and 2, and I started
Yeah.
3, and I never touched 4.
I really love that first campaign.
It definitely
I
holds a
really
special
love it.
place in my heart.
Yeah. Okay. This is actually good. We're going this way. We can go ahead and get the gnolls taken out first.
Yeah.
Send to camp.
Actually, I will probably stick with Lae'zel. She matches the character I'm building as well.
Yeah, it'll work.
Something tore right through these people. They did.
Ooh. I watched every episode of the now scrubbed Talks Machina interviews, as well as a number of
I
additional Mac
fucking loved
interviews.
Talks Machina. And his other
Yeah.
interview show. The bar one, the drink one. I don't fucking
Yeah.
remember what it was called.
Kind of hate how all that worked out. Totally get why it got scrubbed.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, arguably rightfully so. It just I hate that happened because that
Yeah.
was a really good show.
Yeah. No, that's exactly how I feel.
You hate people can be pieces of shit.
Yeah. I'm not personally involved, so I can't be personally mad, you know? So all I am is
Yeah.
like, oh, that makes sense. Bummed about it, though. Fucking... Wait, are you...
Rolled a
Vicious, monstrous
17.
humanoids can spawn from the
Ooh.
corpses of dying hyenas.
final roll 23.
You land a swift strike against her skull. She yelps, then goes still. As the
Damn.
life fades
Curb stomped
from
a
her eyes,
dog?
The non within her dies too.
Yeah,
Stillborn.
it's one less one we have to deal with.
Are hyenas in the dog family or cat? They're not cats. Maybe they
They're
are.
not cat. Is it? Okay, it goes first. I was wondering when it was gonna move.
Ooh. I gotta stop you. I can't get to him.
No time to waste.
game. There we go. Wow.
Hey, it wasn't a miss. It wasn't a miss, and we take those.
Hey, Spooks is here.
Spooks, hello. You're trying to get to him.
Oh my god, are you? You are. Beautiful.
And I was never worried.
Beautiful. Now we just gotta get before these get up.
Watch it. That hyena's going for help. Don't waste a step.
Oh shit, I have no spells. Forgot about that.
Hands on, girly.
You were saying? That's okay.
There you go. Proud of you.
Hey, let's go. She's good at counting. She's...
Well,
Blood.
Place it over around his nose.
That's fine, they're not that hard.
how much you got? 26?
Also, an entire species of Fudas? I knew that. Go off, queens. Peg your boyfriends.
Never a dull moment.
We got it. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
W. They don't really have much on them, but I do send the ears to camp to sell.
Yeah, the ears are actually kind of valuable.
Anything in this box? Ooh, some alchemist fire.
Wait, is that a light crossbow? Yeah, it is.
Got wine and some poison. Kind of weird that those two are in the same box.
Is it? Feels convenient.
Might be useful.
Too convenient. Helta. I guess we go down low and get Karlak.
Yeah, sure, why not?
W.
With haste.
What is your build comprised of again?
Sorcerer Cleric, I do lots of damage once per short rest.
Okay, sorcerer cleric. Oh,
I don't really heal. I can pick people up with a healing word, but I can't really
yeah.
do
Heal them
much.
in combat, which is good.
Yeah.
I've got Shadowheart kind of prioritizing keeping people up, so between those two, we should be good.
Yeah. What would that even do, Helta? Splash, splash. Oh god, she's on fire. Steady onslaught.
That's the stuff.
Sorry, you just seemed
Fuck me.
in
It's
bad.
you, from the
You seemed on
Nautilord.
fire.
Please tell me I found you before those so-called paladins of Tyr did.
I wish I could make it so that feet cam actually would say something else for 2-3 subs, but I have no idea how to do that. I could probably do
Yeah,
that in
no.
Mix It Up.
Yeah. Sends
Good.
a hyperlink
Great.
to
Glad I don't have
it's like
to
a
kill you.
funny GIF or something.
A great heat roars through you, her heat, fiery as the hells. Then you're lost in visions of demonic armies as you tear through a landscape of fire and blood. The Blood War. You saw it from above as the Nautiloid passed through Avernus.
That
This
water's
woman
hitting
was on
this
the
morning.
front line.
Afternoon. It's now afternoon.
It sure is.
I slept my entire morning away. Ooh.
Not
I
by
wonder
choice.
what happened to Baldur's Gate to
I'm a good
make
skull
things even like
crusher,
my Fugi not
But I
being
never
happy.
wanted to serve Zara.
Yeah, I don't.
From that peak I got
I
into
don't
your
even
head,
know.
I'm not the only one with problems on top of problems.
It's a dense game for sure,
Unfair
but
tadpole, huh?
Yeah.
And no joy getting it sorted as of yet, I see. I'm Karlak. And you are...
even then,
Karlak.
Well met, soldier. Now that we're old pals,
I don't know.
how would you feel
Used to
about
not do
helping me
that.
kill
Now
some
it
evil
does do that.
bastards?
It doesn't seem to be too
A
bad.
little background,
As long as
if
it's
your moral
just the
compass needs
Fugi.
something to
Like
point
I've got the stream up on my
You already
phone,
know
making
I
sure
fought
that
in
like
the
the
Blood
actual
War.
game isn't acting
I was good
up.
at killing
That's what I'm
Right.
more worried about.
yeah.
Really good.
As long as
So
that's being
good,
fine,
Zariel,
I can,
the archdevil
I'm
herself,
okay.
made me her personal attack dog.
Yeah, that's how I
Paid
feel
along
about
until I could
Warudo.
get the fuck out of there. Took me 10 years to properly escape.
Hey,
but
Max.
now I'm free.
Max!
How are you today?
Zariel sent goon after goon to hunt me down.
Goon after goon?
Believe
I
me,
mean, no
tell
wonder.
you,
Just look at
I'm
you.
Going.
We are
The latest
currently
yappy little
acquiring
dog she
mommy.
sicked on me are nearby. A group of dopes posing as
And we're not
paladins
gonna
of
let any
Tyr.
sort of maniac kill
help
her
me
for
take 'em
cool
down?
drip. Side eye.
Luckily, the drip is acquirable by other means now.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Goon after noon? Oh. No, goon after goon.
Mr. Goon. Yeah, but Goon
Helta.
Afternoon is now going to be the new greeting.
Oh yeah, that's in there. That's in the
Yeah,
repertoire.
that's in there now. That is a thing.
You want me to kill people?
Afternoon to you too.
Don't worry, I'll lead the charge. But I could use your help. There's a lot of them, and only one of me. After that, we can team up. Take Faerun by the short hairs.
Okay.
Sound good?
A warrior
You-
who winks at her foes while she slays them. You'd be a fool to refuse her.
And I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Fuck yes.
Helta.
They cornered me outside the toll house just up the hill. Doubt they've gone far after the scorching rain. You know I'm up for it, but your
God.
party's a little full.
Hey, now, Helta, the Goon Tracker was lying to me in person last night when we were playing. It was saying they
Until
were
later.
everywhere, and that's not how it worked. We would
Now we're
refresh, and it
talking.
would say one map, like custom. So we'd load customs, and in like a 5-minute period, we'd refresh again before going, and then they'd say Lighthouse, and it kept doing it. I think people are just reporting for the sake of reporting, or they change the spawn, how it works. Anyway, different game.
A game that I will sometime soon have experience in.
Yeah.
You're a berserker,
wasn't-
right?
Yeah, I'm a frenzied barbarian.
Yeah.
If I wasn't doing a movie night, I'd say we do it after stream.
No, I'm excited. I want to see Ghost in the Shell. Though I might not be
Yeah.
able to stay the whole time. I really hope I can.
That's fine. We're gonna get started at 6 p.m. Central.
Yeah, that should be good.
Yeah. Because if we get off about when we normally get off, that'd give me 2 hours to chill and relax. Who did it? Max? Trying to get me wet? It's working.
Oh my god. I'm not going to be able to concentrate.
What?
Uh-huh. Okay, real quick, level up. We'll see if we keep her. I will also drink some water, Max, if you so insist on getting me all
Yes.
hot and bothered.
Make her drink water.
Oh, I'm drinking
not
energy
her
drink.
energy- Yeah, there it is.
It's water.
wa-
It's made of water.
What is it?
It's water and powder.
Me first.
Me first, then you.
Yeah. Only people that properly drink water can go first.
Oh, straight through the front door? Let's go.
You have Karlak. I'm gonna go through the front door and get pre-set up because this fight's kind of a bitch.
I see. Then I'm gonna go scare their wizard. And she'll go, keep her away from me.
Keep that beast away from us, you hear?
Me, the beast. Now that's fucking rich.
Okay, I am pre-set up.
Hell yeah. This is actually a pretty hard fight.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna drink a potion. And we have a short rest, but I think we can get away with not doing it.
No more. Leave us in
I don't
peace,
think I
and we
get
shall leave you
anything
in
either
kind.
of me or
Cut the
Charge
crap,
get anything back from a
Anders.
short rest right
I
now.
know what
Yeah.
That we don't
let her
already
hurt
have.
us.
I forgot to
Please.
double check, but I
just
think I
want to
have
go
my
home.
divine intervention thing still. This water is made of water. That's what I'm saying. Panic. Max has rabies. I knew those teeth weren't horny.
Zariel,
Certainly
What
not.
gave it
we
away?
serve Tyr,
What gave it away? Was
Lord
the
of
snarling
justice,
or the foaming at the
no
mouth?
other.
You know, it was
Mercy.
when he said it.
Half of us are
I
badly
assumed the
injured.
snarling and
The other
foaming at the
half
mouth
dead.
was a sex thing.
I admit, we ambushed you. An assignment from our gods, Tyr. We thought you were devil.
God,
and with your
hate
flames, you proved
when
us
games
right.
have it set up where when
But
you
Tyr
click
will
out
not
something, it
consign us
mutes
to
and
our death.
minimizes.
He is merciful.
Even
Leave
if you have
us,
set it up on
and we'll
borderless
leave you.
window. So that's what the foam in my mouth is. I thought I was just squeaky.
I thought it was just built different.
Yeah, turns out I was built incorrectly. I am built different. Incorrectly, some would say.
I don't like the options in this thing. By the way, I wish there was a way to just like look at Karlak and be like, "Is there a chance you were mistaken?" Because they seem legit. They want to leave us in peace. Okay, but instead I can only threaten her or fuck off. So I guess like her previous conversation is supposed to imply there is no way I fucking leave here without killing these people. But I just don't know enough about her time with Zariel to infer it, I guess. Might be a skill issue on my part. A social skill issue. Anyway, I'm gonna kill you now.
Enough.
They set the
Cannot play
dialogue
pretend anymore.
the way it is with
Karlak,
the connotation that
you're
like
going
people
home in
knew who
pieces
this
if needs
Karlak the
must.
character was.
And you.
And
True.
You'll soon
She
learn what it
was
means
not
to
even
ally
supposed to
yourself with the
originally
likes of
be
this
like a big
garbage.
like this wasn't even supposed to be like a character that joins the party.
Really?
This whole in like the early
I'm
developments of this
free
game,
now.
like Karlak was
And I'm
this
never
interaction, like this
going
quest part was supposed to happen here, but like she was just gonna be kind of like somebody you interacted with and helped out that ends up going along like the team wings and stuff. But when they were showing parts of this game off in the development stages and the beta testings, and they show Karlak off, she became such like a cult classic fan, like that the fans liked, that they had to like turn around. That's why when the game came out, a lot of her like her personal story quests felt kind of hollow and like it could still need some stuff.
Because it was brand new.
Yeah, she was kind of thrown together as a full-time playable character and member of the party.
Hold on, I'm gonna quick save really quick.
Yeah, quick save really quick, and I'm gonna think
Not that
about
we'll be
my
able to go back to it, but you know.
I'm gonna give everyone else a spirit weapon to help with Anders, and then I'm gonna focus on the ranger
That is
with
fair.
With Shadowheart.
I'm gonna go try and murder the wizard.
Count on me.
Okay.
Ah,
All right. For my first trick, little half elf get angry.
huge twink mad.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in the higher difficulties, Anders just like fucking kills someone every turn.
Oh, love a critical hit.
Oh, yeah. but with a raging barbarian,
Not bad. I'm still up.
yeah,
I couldn't do that a second. I couldn't handle that a second time, but still being up after that,
that's all you fucking need.
yeah. And it also is not.
Oh, I guess I'm not gonna trigger opportunity attacks.
Okay.
We'll take it. I'm gonna try and kill him.
Good. Kill him. Face the wall.
There it goes.
That's huge.
And we're fucking done with you.
I'll just send this over here if you want to, on your next turn, run in and help Karlak.
Yeah, that is my...
We'll finish the druid.
No attacking the hold person.
Okay, that, you know what? Fair. Okay.
You got
I
this,
can
I
see
believe.
her. No, even though there's line of sight, I can't do it because it says I'm immobile. Apparently, she wants to move like a millimeter.
Oh, I guess the door frame's kinda in your way. It's a little bullshit.
It is a lot bullshit. I feel like I should be able to target a random leg on the ground with the exploding sinew, bursting sinew, but yeah, the door frame's cooking me there.
The ranger has positioned well.
The one thing they can do, so I will. Why is Cure Wounds back up? Every time she levels up, it wants to throw in shit. I'll give you a healing.
Ooh, smart. Okay, can I even get at you? No, I cannot.
Come here, bitch. I got words.
Me slowly moving objects so I can walk up to this woman. Dude, actually, you know what? Let's just try and break concentration. No, I actually don't even fucking need to do that. I don't know.
Send the spear out.
I should have done it. I'm a fool.
How you gonna push me? How you gonna?
The fact that hold person also ends rage. Brutal.
Yeah, no. For whatever reason, the pathfinding is want me to like run outside to cast these, even though it doesn't need it. Oh, hey, lady. Anyway.
And we're fucking done with that shit.
Yeah. Having fun in there?
Yeah. Just being melted. It's cool.
Anyway. Dog spitters!
Death's close at hand.
Die.
Don't waste a step.
Alright, I'm gonna quickly grab a couple of things before she goes on her tirade.
Oh, okay. I'll keep her in this conversation.
I won't go back. I'm never
They're,
going back.
like they wouldn't disappear, they're just
And if
easier
any
to
of
grab.
Mummy's little friends
Right.
want to pick up where the others left.
And I'm gonna run before she accidentally drops me, as she is so often wont to do. Let me know when to send her off.
I'm gonna go loot the ranger, and then I'm gonna like get out of the way. So if you want to start her, go for it.
Not big enough. Now get out
Also,
before
gonna
you
use
get
one of-
hurt.
Oh,
Now.
can't use it. A breather when you're in conversation. There.
Ow. She did it. She did the thing. She. Ow.
Yeah, I hear her. I'm hiding over here so I don't accidentally burst into flames. Carla can do terrible things to me. Max, you don't know how fucking real that is.
It would just be a really funny way for the honor mode to end. Or for me to use a fucking revival scroll. Bum ba dum bum bum. Just gonna let her have this.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to have a fit.
Yeah.
Sometimes throwing a fit is the best thing. As long as it's not gonna hurt anybody else.
Damn, those burlap sacks are really giving her a run for her money.
Are they?
They took so many hits. Oh, now.
Lightning has been detected near your area. Uh-oh.
That ought to
Wow.
do it.
Fun.
Whew. Had to let off a little steam after facing
Look
off
at
with
my
those
weather app real
ignots.
quick.
Granted, the fire's lasting a little longer than it should.
Oh, okay.
How
It's
do I
already
look?
come through.
The lightning?
Well, the part that had the lightning, it looks like I'm not getting the actual storm until a little while after moving.
Careful,
starts.
soldier. If I burn any hotter,
So, and
I
it doesn't
might
look all
explode.
that serious.
Nice.
hear that?
Has she done had her fit?
She's had her fit. I
Infernal
called her
engine
hot.
for a
We're
heart.
ready to go.
Lets me burn as hot as the hells.
She has some of the best
Since
interactions.
we're running in
character
overdrive
to
since I
character.
left.
She really
Avernus.
does.
Won't be seeing my mechanic anytime soon, so I'll just make the most
Cool.
of the extra
So
heat.
do you want to keep her in, or
Just
do you
don't
want
get
to keep going
too
with Bazel?
close.
I'm still
till I found a
deciding.
way to
I don't
calm
know.
down.
What's why don't we? Because you're very messed up.
Mm-hmm. I should be good with a short rest.
I did the short rest, and
Oh.
you did not get very much healing.
Yeah, I was still on fire and had to walk out while on fire.
Wild, right? And believe it or not,
Well,
I'm one of Zariel's least mutilated pets.
The other reason is because
But it's a bit early in the game to be
Shadowheart's
getting into
gas
tragic
on spell.
backstories.
Yeah,
Let's save
I'm
the scar show for
also
later,
gassed.
After we've worked up
I'm
an
wondering
appetite
if we
for
could
tragedy.
take Little John.
Meanwhile, I'll need to find someone who can tune
But
up
maybe
my
we
engine
shouldn't risk
sooner
it.
I
rather than
remember
later.
who Little John is
Believe
now.
me when I say this thing
Yeah.
is hot.
The
The first
we can
time I
always
faced
run
down
away.
those paladins,
This is
they
true.
let slip there was an infernal
Maybe. I
mechanic
don't know.
in the area. A Tiefling.
He's very slow.
He might be able to stabilize
He is
things
very slow.
if I can find him.
Yeah, let's try
What
it.
is- I say you drink some juice.
Mm-hmm.
Drink some, like sippy cup of
Sounds
juice.
like a good lead. Hopefully our
and
guy will
we
be among
try
them.
out Little John, have her
Tune
for
up
another
would do
fight
this
or
old
two, and see
tub
if you
a
want to keep her
world
around.
of good.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Which works for me.
Yippee, yippee, yippee. Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Make sure you trade out Cure Wounds.
Yes, thank you. Although it doesn't really matter, I'm out of spell slots. I'm gonna do that.
Fair. He just phased in front of me. I'm like, damn, he's not there. Oh, yeah, do we want to go downstairs as well? Grab all that shit?
We can do it after the Little John fight.
Yeah.
We're already up here.
There's nothing too useful down there. Well, actually, I should look at weapons really quick to see if there's anything better
so
for...
I've got Guiding Bolt, Guiding Bolt, Healing Word, Inflict Wounds, and Command. And then I've got Hold Person and Spiritual Weapon. I have 2 more slots.
You've got gloves that give you sleight of hand in Shadowheart's inventory, just so you know.
Oh, shoot. I need to put those on her. I'm leaning towards... I'm going to add, just so I have a, like, level 2 level healing, I'm going to add Prayer
Mm-hmm.
of healing. And I am trying to decide on one more level 2 spell, and...
You know what?
Warding Bond, Warden Ally, that gain resistance to all damage, have a +1 to armor class and saving throws. I'm between Warding Bond and, what was the other one? Not Protect from Poison. No, actually, as I look at these, the only other good option would be Warding Bond, honestly.
I never use Warding Bond, but it can be very handy, I hear.
Yeah. I'll throw it on there. All right. Have you drank the juice?
I have drank the juice. This is as healthy as I'm gonna get. Did we loot Anders? Does he have a good sword on him? Can I steal it off you?
Oh yeah, I got. Who do you want to have it? I'll send it over.
Karlak.
Karlak. Okay, because I don't need it. It gives Tears protection.
Right, it's not useful for barbarians, really.
No, and I've got the fire shield from the outfit.
Also true. Which is fire shield concentration?
Oh wait,
it's not.
No,
Ooh,
it's not. But
that's really good.
As I look, scorching flames, if you're ready, you take only half damage of all cold damage, but you deal fire damage to anyone that hits you with a melee. So it's not really helping on the armor aspect unless somebody happens to be doing cold damage stuff.
Yeah, it's not protection, it's just hurt.
Yeah. It's more retaliation, which is like my kind of vibe.
Absolutely.
But
See what this does.
Shadowheart, when we have spells up, can always like throw a thing on me.
Mm-hmm. But I think it's +1 as well. Ooh. Okay, we ready?
No, but do you need another juice? You got 13 hit points.
No, I'm just gonna. I mean, we got 2 frontliners, and I'm heavy armor based. I think I'm good.
Okay.
Here's the fucking plan.
Okay. I'm fucking with it.
Excellent. And then, if you want to arrange yourself wherever you want.
Do we want to get in close? Because we can, me and Karlak can get all the way up next to it from this way.
Yeah, that is true. Not a bad idea.
Yeah, if you want to send Karlak up.
Long and low.
Where you're going?
Everywhere.
Yeah, because you I mean, like, look at this. I got like all the way over here.
Yeah, fuck it. And then we'll just stand up.
I think I'll just stand her up. Sacred Flame.
There we are. Rah!
Oh god, double barbarian.
It's time to be very angry. Well, not that angry, evidently.
What now?
Oh no. Did pretty good. Alright. I'll move her a little bit closer. Not bad.
Whoa! He's never done that before. He summoned Mephits.
Yeah, that did not happen last time.
Hmm. All right.
Deep and move.
Okay. Well.
All right, Karlak, it's go time.
Damn, we're
Okay.
running him for all his fucking worth.
Okay. Okay. There might double bar. Oh. Uh-oh. Oh, never mind. It was a great match. Just retained.
Yeah, you're good, you're good.
I need to hold
Why are you
on.
hitting me? I'm just a little guy.
Oh, W.
And you're good. Damn.
Had a lot of
Uh-oh.
gold on him.
Oh, you took it all. Okay. I was like, why didn't he spawn with all his shit? Yeah, he has like gems and things.
No, it was just gold.
Oh, nice. Also works.
What path
Okay.
lies before me?
Go loot downstairs and then long rest, or vice versa?
Yeah, we should be fine as long as we don't trip the trap.
Which I have never done in my life.
Uh-huh.
Okay, maybe once, but not often.
Okay. There it is. There it is. I swear this never happens to me.
I swear.
Enough time for its killer to have moved on.
I love that we see like fuck tons of corpses in this game, but we've decided to comment on this one.
Something good here, I hope.
Loot all the shit. 1,000
nice
danger
shit.
sounds. Ah, fuck it. Yeah, why not?
Okay. Door's open for you.
Oh shit. All right.
Let's have a look.
Loot.
I'll go
Everything.
loot the big room first, since you're sitting pretty. And you are. Look at you, posed up. Eek. Almost forgot.
Yeah, I never said it all. Never happens to me.
Everything's fine. I was never gonna do it.
Uh-huh.
A +1 great axe for my lady love.
Ooh, you could go get the heavy great axe off of
Lazel.
Lazel.
This is true.
Can you keep everyone occupied while I run to the restroom real fast?
Of course. Hey, everyone.
W.
Who wants to get
I'll be
banned
right
on
back.
Twitch? Grab that. I always give this to Karlak because I never be running a paladin.
That'll fit
So
my
an extra strength saving throw plus, we take those. How much are you worth? 30? I guess I'll take you. I guess. All right. That's it. And almost forgot. My favorite early armor, aesthetically speaking, is in this room. I don't know how many people grab it. Captain said he had never seen it before. But I will be going to grab it and showing it to you guys. Because it's very cool. Great sword, sure. Actually, I think it's in the room before this. But hold on. I never play a strength-based character. I love weird dex builds or wisdom or charisma mostly, actually. But occasionally having a strength build is really fun because I just don't have to worry about what I'm picking up. I just take it all. Whereas usually, Captain's smart, I'm impatient. I just like go and I don't send shit to camp because I'm not willing to go to camp every time I run into a salesman. I'll take it if it's worth something and is not too heavy. Ooh. Should grab that. Here it is, though. Broken padded armor. You can find it up here, and I give it to Asterion every time. It looks cute on him. Actually, you know what? No, I can't. I'm not going to put him in my party just to put on the cute armor. But that's it. It's got one sleeve missing. It's cute. I like it. It's hot. I fuck with it. I like a ragged look. And then there's also a broken club, but that is useless. That is well and truly useless. trying to to think. Lae'zel would be useful because it's useful to have someone with a little bit utility, and the Battlemaster subclass gives you that ability to trip, ability to disarm, things like that. But honestly, Battlemaster kind of works way better in a dex build, in my personal opinion, because so many of the attacks can be used for bow attacks as well, and you want to be able to hit those. Honestly, most fighter subclasses work better on dex.
I return.
Welcome back. I was just complaining about Lae'zel and fighter.
Really?
I'll give it a shot.
Yeah,
What in particular?
I feel like a lot of fighter subclasses work better on dex builds. I don't know if that's a crazy thing to say, but Battlemaster especially, you get the same, like, ability shots.
Yeah, you get the same benefits on top of having better AC.
Well, not even an AC. You get those abilities, those Battlemaster tactic things, and you can use them on ranged and melee. So in a dex build, you can hit range shots with them and trip people and disarm people, and it's really
also,
useful.
You left Karlak down there.
Oh. She was having fun staring at that wall.
Yeah.
God, imagine if I left her behind it as you guys got up. That'd be fun. Just like, bye, Karlak. You live there now.
Bye, Karlak. Goodbye. Have a good time.
Oh my God. We're going to long rest anyway. I guess I could have just left her.
Yeah. Just a heads up, we have an ad on my end in about 5 minutes.
Oh my God, same. Our cycles are synced.
Oh my God. Oh, well.
My favorite way to meet Will. I like doing this way so much more.
The Blade of Frontiers.
Because fuck this guy.
Thought I'd shaken you for good after the Mind Flare ship. You just can't get enough of me, can you?
Karlak.
Advocatus Diaboli. Okay, college majors. Let's chill out.
I'm gonna be honest, never been a fan of his character.
It was I watched a video about his character before a lot of updates were made to it, and I think it was way better before. He was kind of like a prick. He was kind of a huge asshole, which I think works with a noble background. Like, I don't fuck with the noble, you know? They're not.
Yeah. Yeah, he's supposed to be daddy's boy that ran off.
Right.
But
hello, Undoubtable!
Undoubtable!
But my character wouldn't know about him.
Pride of the coast, in the flesh. And you've got...
Oh?
A great fire roars.
I hate him, and then he does a cute little moan, and I go, wait a minute.
You are the blade of frontiers racing through the wastes of Avernus.
Hold on.
Just a diabolical figure, red skin.
Maybe he has some redeeming qualities, you know? Maybe I gotta give him a chance.
Bloodied great axe held high. He chases the fiend, ignited with rancor. She is an infernal war devil, a threat to the living. Evil incarnate.
Your allies are fraud. A soldier in the archdevil Zariel's army. Either I cut her down, or she burns the Sword Coast to ash.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes. Oh, or that.
Wrong franchise, wrong
Another
franchise.
vision. Karlak's blade raised, slicing through devils, Zariel's servants.
Pineapple.
As her eyes dart around, seeking escape. The man shudders
what you working
with
on?
Karlak's desperation. She is a victim of the Blood War, not an agent of it.
By Baldur's helm, No. I will not be tricked.
You really want it to be a trick.
I may be
really bad.
soldier, but I never wanted to serve Zariel.
It's way
Ripped
more
it away
inconvenient
from
for
her the
you if
first
it's
chance I
not a
got.
trick.
And yet you served.
Every time I do this, is it necessary? Is it dramatic? No and yes. But I do it every time. Fuck you, I'll kill you.
How about about we all take a nice deep breath and calm the
Yeah, she's not
fuck
into it.
down?
But I say it every time.
Just 'cause I want to live doesn't mean I want him dead.
Oh, okay.
It comes out making, like, narrative-wise, it really shows her off.
Yeah.
In the proper light.
No,
I
it's a
feel.
great line. The immediate, like, wait. Yeah, fine. Just, like, stop trying to stab. Put your fucking sword away before I put it back in you.
No! Devils cannot be trusted.
Boy, I will break you in half.
Would you listen to sense?
Literally not even a devil.
This doesn't have to end
Just, like,
badly.
factually
for either of
incorrect.
us.
You fucking
You know
nerd.
monsters, right?
I'd love to come
Better
at
than
that
anyone.
interaction narratively from the perspective
Look
of, like,
into my
a war
eyes.
cleric.
Mm-hmm.
Can't you see I'm not what
Like,
you
please.
think?
My god is stronger than your patron.
Shit. You really are no devil, are you?
Chill out.
Daddy fight. My dad could beat up your
I've been
dad.
deceived.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank the gods. Thought I was gonna have to take your head.
You would have died in the attempt.
Will, come on now.
There have been
Well,
enough threats
hey,
today.
beautiful. There's like 7 of us.
I'll do you one better.
Yeah.
Allies. We're looking to get rid of
Ally.
these parasites for good. And ruin some bastards' days while we're at it. Sounds like your kind of venture.
Someday I do really
I've
want
not
to play
grown
this
any
game
tentacles
as
yet,
Karlach
thank
and
Baldwin.
Romance Will.
luck
I
won't
hear
be on
that's
our side
a
forever.
fun route.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
You have my blade.
I hear it's very sweet.
Your leader willing, of course.
Well, soldier, what's the word?
How do I know I can trust you?
Let
You tried
my
to
deeds
stab me.
come prove my worth. I've pledged my life to
God, you're
protecting
cute.
the meek from
It's
monsters.
like watching a puppy.
But tonight, I was the rampaging beast.
A puppy with a Latin degree.
I like how Lae'zel's just in the back, like not interested in
I
this
could
at all.
not give a fuck about anything happening here.
Yeah. Yeah, like she was just standing there, and now that like it's obvious the fight's not happening, she's like, all right, I'm gonna go back to what I was doing.
Right. I really wanted to kill this man. I guess I'll settle for beating up my dummy again.
Yeah.
Alright.
I'd love to join, but I don't think there's enough space for me to squeeze in.
Hey, just because I'm tight doesn't mean you can't. Sorry. Yeah, chill here.
Everyone on this team is nothing but trouble. But I'm sure we can all agree to keep
What do
it
you mean by
down
that?
to a simmer.
Well met.
See, how can I bring back
And a
Lae'zel
thousand
when she
sorrows.
says shit like that?
I
When
see
she
the
says
good
shit
in
like
you,
that,
Karl.
Captain.
I promise
I'm
you to
blushing.
not fight
I like it.
Even when the
double
hells
cleric, double
burn
bar.
hottest.
Yeah, yeah.
The famous
Yeah.
blade of frontiers in the
Oh, hey, the
flesh.
ads are synced.
Clever, this
Right?
hero act you've got going.
Hero, blade, names strangers gave me. My friends call me Will.
This interaction is
Excellent.
one of my favorites.
If we ever become friends, I'll know what to call you.
Like, what a great line from our vigilante character, and what a great line from our mistrustful emo woman.
Yeah.
Oh, this is such a suave answer in return. Oh, cool, I don't care. I didn't ask.
Yeah. I know one thing I'm doing real quick.
Glad Will saw sense. Even more glad he decided to stick around. Takes a pretty slick mover to track down old Karlach.
Does it?
And then we put that on. W. Okay. All right. I always swap out
Same.
for.
Now,
Bazel's
instead of a
camp wear.
liability, I've got a friend.
That's right, that's
Or
right.
I will have soon.
Gotta
Anyway.
show the abs off.
No bondage gear on the males. It's a coward's fucking. That's all I'm saying.
Hold on. While you have that thought, I'm gonna go talk to my girlfriend.
Oh, yeah.
The blade of frontiers. Let's hope we'll.
She's a lot more hopeful in her one-on-one, which is also
Yeah.
very like her.
You've been witness to a pantomime, I'm
I
sorry
love
to
her
say.
interaction if you get
And
hers
I've
when you
played
first
my
pick up
part all too poorly.
Karlach.
Oh my
I like
god,
her.
yeah.
She can pick me up and carry me off.
What were we talking about? It's like, no, I see you, girl.
Yeah, no.
Someone set you on Karlak's tail. Who?
I can say only this. Karlak's not the only one who's had a villain's knife held to their throats. One night soon when we make camp,
we need to go look and make sure.
the veil will be lifted,
Gale's dying.
and I'll pay my penance.
Gale is still like not keeled over.
Oh, he's killed over on my screen.
Oh, is he?
Uh-huh.
He's not on mine. Oh, you get to deal with it then. That'd be your problem.
Hand me the guidance necklace that's on your girlfriend.
It's in your pocket. We don't need it. We have
Double guidance.
we have 2 clerics in the party. It is fine.
You don't know the half of
Send
it.
to camp. Actually, I'm gonna send all this shit to camp.
I've known a few warlocks in my time. Talented,
I don't
of
really need
course.
the
They're
spider
sometimes
boots,
too eager
so
to
I'll
listen
send
to the
those to camp
devils
as well
on
in
their
case you need 'em.
shoulders.
Also, I'm gonna
Comes
give
with
you
the
the infernal
territory,
iron.
unfortunately.
Ah, yes. That would be helpful. You alright, man? You look like you might die.
We've been traveling together for a while now, and it's just about time that I shared something with you. It's a rather personal
short
matter that
sword.
I'd prefer
Yeah,
to keep
okay.
quiet, but
Send
needs
all that
must
to
when the
camp.
devil drives. I have no choice
And
but to
sort by
speak.
type, so everything's back
You
the way
see,
it should.
I have this
We have a lot of gold. We ought to
condition.
start looking at
very
things we can
different
pick
from the
up.
parasite we share, but just as deadly.
Do you want to go do the city battle, and then we could go hang out with the Zent?
Thank you for the offer, but the treatment for my condition
we
is
can.
They got some
very
good shit.
specific. What it comes down to is this.
I tell you one thing. You probably need
Every
to-
so
need
often,
do.
I need to get my
I
hands
really
on a
like
powerful
getting
magical item
The
and absorb the weave inside.
what's it called? The missile snaring gloves from the dude at the Grove. So I
Yes.
may run and get those real quick after.
I
And
can
I
say
like
no
I like
more
putting
on
them
the
on
matter. Not now, anyway.
Shadowheart.
Just
Yeah.
trust me when I say
Do you
something
want me
after
to-
we take the nap,
importance.
we can run and grab those
It's been
and then
days
go
since
do.
I last consumed an
I
artifact.
can also
and
sell
before
everything
we
to
were
him since I'm
abducted,
the charisma.
It is time.
Yeah,
person.
Once,
By that
once
I
we
mean,
get
it's
over there, I'll
imperative
send
that I
everything to you.
find and
Sick.
consume strands of
That
weave
I've
at the
got.
earliest possible juncture.
In fact, I will grab that right now and type. Boop, 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 boop.
You have my thanks.
Oh,
and
I've
fear
accumulated
not,
a lot of stuff
your
for us.
implicit trust is well placed and will be rewarded with any and all means at my disposal. As luck would have it, you're already primed to give me exactly what I need.
That. Lots of things. Strength character. It's nice to just put all that in my pocket and not be overloaded.
Yeah. I was just talking about that while you were in the bathroom. I was like, I never play a strength character. I'm so happy to just grab everything and just not think about it.
Yeah.
That hit the spot. I can feel it work. The magic, it's like a lullaby that sings to sleep the demon
Oh,
inside.
big stretch. There we go.
A metaphorical demon, I haste to point out, but no less dangerous. And no less bound to wake up again to continue its ravages. Such is the nature of all monsters.
I started a
Grateful
female
as I
character
am,
once
the
and
course of our
ventured down
camaraderie
the
is much better
the
served by
romance
not
route
taking
with
that
Gale.
particular detour.
It's
Not
all
just
right.
yet.
It's
Sincerely, though.
extremely
I
good.
ask a lot from you with
However,
few answers in return. But in time,
the way
all will
the
be
way it
told.
ends up, I don't know. I don't fuck with him. I don't.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
a.
You were a romantic, and you were like your romance is very sweet, but you also give off the air of someone that would do everything you did with me to anyone that would give you the time of day.
Yep.
Just because they gave you the time of day.
And he would, and that proves
And he
itself.
would, and I don't fuck with it as a person.
Yeah.
My lady, I bow to your boundless kindness.
God, he is suave though.
Yeah. It's
Can't slow down.
you like him and Will. It's Will versus
I've
Gale.
known people who are
Person
hungry
who
for power,
acts educated
but
and person who
Gale
is
takes it a bit
educated.
too literally for my liking. I wonder how he does it. Why he does it.
You use big
I'm
words
sure
to
all will
sound
be
smart.
revealed in time,
He uses big
but
words.
I don't
he
like it.
knows big words
A
because he's
waste of
smart.
perfectly
Yeah.
good treasure.
All right.
Gale is positively voracious.
I don't think I've talked to Astarion.
Let him suck up
What's this
all the
from?
magic he needs, as long as he doesn't snack on a Githyanki silver sword.
Azador.
Also, it's very fun to talk to Shadowheart after Gale eats his
Gale
first snack.
slapped that thing up like a horse with
yeah.
a carrot.
It's like,
I hope he got what he
eats
needed from it.
fancy shit like I drink wine. Okay, go off, girl. Too much information. Didn't ask, but I love you.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, I think we have touched bases with everyone.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty content. Hold on. I need to give my favorite armor to Astarion.
Oh.
Is it vital? No. Do I love it?
traps,
Yes. This one. I like the way he looks in it a lot.
Oh. Just the tattered, beat up.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's gone through it.
And I'm just checking on all of them to see. I actually might give the tier sword to Lae'zel and take the big ass axe. And the trident and the throwing things. Okay. Ooh. Also random valuable stuff.
Esker, shirtless, covered in blood. Kinda thick.
Everything as it should be.
Yeah.
Wait, speaking of good camp clothes. There we are.
There you go.
There we are.
There we are.
Accidentally made Will naked, but you know what? Am I complaining? Here, you can have my clothes, I guess. I guess. Though if you find camp clothes called swarthy seawear, I always give that to Will in return for stealing his knickers.
I don't remember if I've seen those.
They're cool. I like them. They got cool little leg wraps.
Huh.
Okay. Eberton.
Eat. Food. Bed.
Potato.
Food.
Wine.
Potato. Wine. Crab.
God, I fuck with a crab rangoon.
I could fuck up crab wontons.
Mm. I don't think I've ever had those.
It's crab ragoons. It's just the fried dough portion is folded into like a triangle.
Ah.
It's the same thing.
That
It's just
sounds
the
way
one-
better.
It's the one you prominently see here.
Anything of use?
Shape is important when it comes to things that I want to shove in my mouth.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to fast travel. Did we unlock the fast travel over here? I think we got it.
Before we do that, do we want to... Oh, we didn't even do that. Do we want to go do the bigger Knoll fight so we have the Zent hideout thing? Oh, no, that's right. We're going to the Druids really quick.
Yeah, we're going to the Druids really
Missile
fast. I'm
snaring.
just gonna run over there and get missile snaring real quick. And
Do you want me to buy it for you?
Yeah, I'll give you the gold.
Save a little cash.
You have the... Once you get over there, because I don't want to over-encumber you by
Right.
risk.
Poor favor.
I'll hand everything and the gold over to you, and we'll let you do the buying. Because you were charisma based right now, aren't you?
The cleric bit is just for show. Everything's into sorcerer.
You got gift. You were born with gifts, but you do pray.
You know how like rich people all have connections with each other? That's me and the gods.
Oh.
Need anything else?
I've had my experience with Southern Baptists.
Of course.
Yeah.
But please, remember, you're not the only one in need.
Damn.
I'm gonna send all the items to you.
Okay.
To sell. So, Merry Christmas. And then 1,340 gold in your pocket. Maybe? Will it let me do it? Or it won't let me send the gold to you.
I might be over encumbered, like way over encumbered.
Yeah, you're too heavy. I can't.
It's okay. I got money on me and a lot of shit to sell.
Okay. You do the talking. I'll do the buying. I'll do the paying for it, baby girl.
Well, I still buy it cheaper, I think, than you, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You do the buying. I'll just anytime you're short on the money, I'll just float it over.
You do the carrying of the funds. Oh wait, I wanted that. Fuck. Give that back.
Oh yeah, I see it now. You were heavily encumbered.
Oh no, that's a battle axe, not a thing. Okay. Interesting.
Did you give a weapon to Karlak? Because there is not anything on her back.
I didn't. I forgot. But that's okay. I forgot.
And for gore.
Okay. Sure. Sorry.
You're fine. Ain't bothering me none.
Then all this shit. I was carrying a cauldron for some reason.
Oh, I know one thing we can do while we're here. We never came back and dealt with the Karlak.
Oh, that's
the
Kaga.
Kaga situation.
Yeah, an excellent point.
Yeah. We have options.
I'm keeping the tongs on me. You never know when you need a pair of tongs.
Fair. True and fair. Put that there.
Okay.
Sorry.
Something for you. Okay, and then I am buying... I love Spell Thief, but we don't have anyone who needs... You're not turning Shadowheart into a dex build, are you?
I don't know. Do you think it should?
It's helpful if you want to equip her with Spell Thief. When she crits, she gets a free level 1 spell slot. But then again, you're mostly attacking with cantrips eventually anyway, so I guess it's not that helpful.
Yeah, it'd be fine.
Yeah.
It'd be focusing on something that wouldn't necessarily be useful later down the road.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let me just check out everything he has. Okay, the missile snaring gloves. Anything else you want from him?
I don't know. Do you see anything that would be useful?
Not really.
Right now, I know he gets another round of stuff when we hit level 5. So really, if there's nothing you see now, we can just come back after we hit level 5 and he'll have more stuff for us.
Oh, that's kind of smart. Okay, I won't buy... He has +1 heavy armor that, like, would give me +1 armor class.
Yeah.
But... Oh, no.
I know.
No, yeah, it would. But, like...
I know. I'll put the missile snaring gloves on Shadowheart, and then there's that one armor that's good for clerics, unless you want it. That's down in the Underdark. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. When we get to the Underdark portion of our adventure, we'll grab it, and we'll see if you would rather have it for your cleric build, or if not, we can put it on Shadowheart.
Okay, you now have the gloves.
The gloves.
Ooh, you know what?
Excuse me.
I'm gonna buy the Dragon's Grasp since you have that flaming sword. Or no, it doesn't make people burning. Never mind. I will not buy that.
Yep. And do you want the gloves of power now that? Well, Gale can absorb this, so I'll put them in your pocket, and if we're not gonna need them,
yeah.
Feed them to Gale.
I'm gonna throw them in Asterian's pocket for now, just because they're pretty useful. They're kind of useful for him.
Oh.
But I will fish them out of his pocket eventually. And then I'm gonna go downstairs and talk to the smith really quick.
Yeah. About the only real useful thing. Oh yeah, you need to talk to the smith because of the infernal iron. I forgot. I'm not gonna lie. My last few solo runs, Karlach was not in the party.
Brutal. Absolutely brutal.
Thought I sensed an inferno.
I don't play a good guy every time. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't play a good guy every time too. I have one bad guy run right now where I have I haven't killed Karlach yet, but I assume she's coming for me.
If you're from Elturel.
I've got one run that I play solo, and to give you an idea, the only people I have on my party in my group that I have picked up are Astarion and
I got lucky.
Mm.
Looks like you did too.
Damn, when'd you get rid of Shadowheart and why?
Haven't picked her up. Like haven't gotten her. I didn't pick her up at the beach.
A little gift from Zariel.
If you don't pick her up at the beach at all, there's a
very hot.
You know, if you
might be
if
burning
you
out
don't get her out of the box, she's knocking on a door down there.
Mind if I take a listen?
If you get her out of the box, she's laying unconscious at the
don't
beach.
get too close, or your eyes
I didn't
will melt
interact
shut.
with her in either of those situations, so there will be a certain point a little bit later that she pops. Like, it
at the
forces her
bridge,
to
right?
Yeah, at the bridge.
Phew. You really are burning up.
It's like when you cross the bridge and it starts that sequence, like the unseen force is trying to take control of you at that moment.
Very risky.
Right.
If you haven't picked her up yet, she runs in and saves the day.
I need
Which, awesome.
Yeah.
And a prayer that my hammer will survive the work.
And with the kind of run that I'm doing on that one, I feel like that's like the best time for her to make her entrance.
I'm not sure how much longer it'll keep running the way it's going.
Will you be able to turn down
Oh shit, I have a VO request.
Worried I'm gonna go in
you
for
do
a
have a VO
handshake and
request.
singe someone's arm.
Let me finish this interaction, Spooks, otherwise my brain will get confused trying to talk and listen at the same time.
Help both.
But I'm not gonna read it until I'm reading it out loud. I'm not gonna cheat.
And allow you to touch whomever you please.
I'll read it. I cheat all the
Hey
time.
soldier, I think we picked up some of that infernal iron already. What say you? Should I give it to him?
What say you? Yeah, fuck yeah.
Please let this work.
The weight of it.
Ooh, did we pick up the
blaze of
coin off the
chaos.
top of the tax house?
Can't imagine this where my heart should be.
Is it
Must
on
be
the
quite
roof?
the experience.
No, but I can run over there and grab it.
Give me just a moment.
That's not essential, but it's useful.
We can, well, I mean, you got a car, like, might as well accumulate points.
Right.
So we
Though
can-
honestly, they're not that helpful to feed to her. She only does like an extra D4 fire damage. I
Yeah,
think.
but if you take if
There.
memory serves, if she takes enough of them, something
You'll
funny
have
happens.
to install it, I'm
Oh,
afraid.
okay.
I don't think there are thick enough gloves in all
memory
the
serves.
realms to protect from that kind of heat.
Hell yeah. I love the tiger piercings for the animal barbarian so much.
Oh yeah, it's really good.
That feels good.
Two
I'm
frenzied
still
barbarians
burning
would have
hot
been
as hell's
overkill.
hot, but I feel less
I mean, I suppose I could have made her an
changeable.
frenzy and then
Cheers,
make her
mate.
exclusively throwing with the pike,
And as for the
but
heat, I haven't
we don't
got
need
some
another
solutions
weird
now.
backliner.
I'm not giving up.
No, there's a lot of
Could
weird
be
going off in the
if
mid.
combustion chamber had some insulation, or if we had some kind of enchanted coolant. Find me again in Baldurs Gate. If I'm worth my salt, I'll have figured something out by then. Take
Where does
care,
that saying come from? I
and
actually
hopefully
really
the
want to
next time
know.
I see you, I'll have
What's the
something
saying?
promising to report.
If I'm worth my salt.
Pocket any
Or worth your salt
infernal
at all.
iron you find along the way.
I don't know.
Alright, we out here annoying VTubers by saying we out here too much? True. My harem gals got them gravity defiers? I have a harem? Them sweater puppies looking like they wear made in Blender? Ha. Spelling. I could slap them boys, go play Baldur's Gate for 3 for 4 hours. Those were confusing words. And when I come back, they'd still be jiggling? Find a doctor. Or a chiropractor. Or something. Don't mess with me, man. I'll hit you with a cursed VO redeem that'll get you flustered. Creeps rise up. Love you guys. You don't gotta force me to say love you guys. But you do have to force me to make that face. I'll try. The equals 3 face. That's all I got.
W.
That came across
One
on the
of the more
Fugi, right?
Damon's upgrade didn't cool me
One
down.
of the more tamed redeems. If you
juice
hadn't
me
had
up.
the Fugi, I'd have put you in a maid dress on the
I
spot.
don't think
Damn.
I've ever felt more powerful.
And I missed the maid dress. I'm opening up Warudo in the background, just in case it starts working. Literally, I missed the maid dress.
I'm busy making Mattis like upsetty.
Do we flirt with Karlak?
Yes.
Is that even a question?
Yeah.
Do you want to?
I'm gonna see. I forget how many times you make him flip the coin before he or they get mad.
That scene's really good.
I'd like that. Now, let's find that infernal iron before I overheat.
Heads this time.
You're killing me. You
There.
really are.
Not yet. Flip it again.
Mister, come on. Heads or tails?
Tails.
Tails! There. Happy?
Not yet. Do it again.
Fine. Heads or tails?
Tails again.
Tails! There. Happy?
No.
Heads or tails?
Heads.
Slowly creeping rage in this child.
There. Happy?
No.
You're killing me here, mister. You really are. Just take the ring, huh? Free sample. Now, you want to take a look at the other stuff I got? Or maybe you just want to go? You've got it. One sec. That's what I got.
Was that the first? When I made you do that, was that the first time you'd ever done that?
Yes. Yes. This is the first time I've ever done
I was
that.
high as fuck, and that made me laugh so fucking hard.
I'll pick up some food for the camp.
You just got robbed, gamer. I don't even know what he takes off you.
I don't know either.
Probably like 1 coin. It's never enough to
maybe 1
notice.
coin. Yeah, I failed my perception check. It is what it is. It's on brand.
It happens.
Oh, he's got. I forgot he has a bunch of dyes.
I love buying all
got
his
your
stupid
phone?
rings.
All the ring. Oh yeah, ring of being really invisible.
It doesn't have a gem, or maybe it's just really invisible.
He stares right past you, as if
Infinite
you're
wishes.
invisible. You see
Exterior ring
nothing
of
out when you
card
turn
with
back.
nonsensical runes. Ring of resistance to ants. That's my favorite.
Yep.
Lives are at stake.
Okay. Yep.
Oh, robbed
yeah,
again. Oh, I can talk to her while she's robbing you.
That's funny.
Oh.
Uh,
Hi. What?
Hi.
I'm the guard.
Oh,
So don't steal anything.
I got it.
Let's go.
You were just robbed.
Yep.
Fuck.
Now let's see what they took.
And there she goes.
I mean, like maybe 10 gold.
Yeah.
Like maybe 10 gold. Not bad.
Didn't we accidentally
Alright.
get their friend killed by harpies?
Yeah, that's why I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
Alright, in our defense,
We tried.
they were gonna get killed by harpies if we weren't there regardless.
It's true.
An effort was made.
An effort
Yeah.
was made.
An effort was made, but a decision was had, and that decision was going to the harpies on for honor at level 2.
True.
Alright.
Alright, Kaga. Do you want a barbarian it? See if there's any fun dialogue?
Yeah, I can.
Speak while there's time.
Do you care how this ends?
Nope.
Okay. You mean to take the grow for the shadow druids?
Rats!
There was zero reason to make the shadow druids outfits look like that.
No, there was a reason. There was a reason. I'm
No.
looking at a few of them.
There was a want. Reason?
There was a
No.
desire.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a desire.
I'll tell you what there was zero reason for. Not letting me wear them. What the fuck?
Yeah. I'm sure there's a mod for that.
That nose of yours has gone poking in our business.
Damn.
Mistress
Fuck, there
Alden,
probably is.
I can explain. Shh, shh. No need. It couldn't be helped.
It's like there's zero reason to put that outfit on Granny there.
You think yourself quite the
I'm into it.
spy, don't you? Go on, tell him.
Yeah, I just always hand the letter over. It's like, I'm not,
Right.
I ain't gotta explain shit to you. It's in writing.
I have receipts.
Yeah. And here's the twit longer.
Have you lost your mind?
Have you lost your mind?
He's weak,
I love
Wrath.
that.
But in the shadows, we are strong. We are safe. There is no other way. You and Elsin welcome untouchables to your midst. You defile the grove for the sake of harmony. Olladin speaks truth. Who among you disagrees? Who would see this grove in ruin? The choice is made. Koga, burn the tainted away. Start with the snitch. As you say,
I'm the last fucking person you want to.
Oh no, nothing to say. Do you want to try?
I'll see. All I've got's a flat roll, and I'm not gonna waste any like inspirations or anything on this.
Yeah.
So what we get's what we get. I'm not even gonna bless it.
I'll guide you.
Oh, okay.
And there we are.
No.
Yeah.
You
But
don't
we
know
gotta
what
do
you
it
say.
again.
Oh yeah.
In shadow, we are purified.
Koga's voice breaks and her lips tremble.
Ah, but you
She
got that
heard
wisdom.
reason in your words.
Yeah, we'll do
Up
that
to
one.
you. If you
Even though-
wanted to just be like, okay, now I kill you. Like, that would be fair.
Nah, I'll put it in the heart of the cards.
Yeah. The heart of the cards want her alive.
Yeah. I'll put it up in the heart of the cards. The will of the roll. Oh my god, is that the captain? The VTubing sensation? That's
And I've
Hey,
always
Nixie.
said that. I've always fucking said that.
every night I go into Nixie's stream. That's how I go in and say, oh my god, is that the Nixie Nova? The Twitch TV VTubing sensation that's sweeping the nation? With the hit Inertia cover out now on YouTube and
True.
Spotify?
And it is hit. It's on Spotify?
It is a hit. Yeah, it's on Spotify. It's
Hold on.
Like, I have it on, I listen to it all the time at work. It's on my like daily playlist. And
Oh,
stuff.
that's going in the 2026 playlist. You fucking know it.
Yeah. I keep it on rotation. It's so good. It's
I
very
keep
catchy.
that thing on me. I do occasionally
Yeah.
listen to it on YouTube. I'm just not often on YouTube listening to music.
Yeah. When I'm doing projects at work, I've got a Spotify speaker. I have like duct tape to my toolbox.
Sick.
And or not JBL speaker, duct tape to my toolbox, and I just have shit playing on it. I've been listening to it at work all the time. I imagine coworkers are getting pissed. I don't care.
We do not care.
No, not at all.
Okay, so now this is not going to be hard at all because we don't have Moonbeam Caster fucking up our whole life.
Oh yeah, we're fine. We love you. You goofy goober.
We do. And I've always fucking said that.
Yeah.
We are doing our first ever For Honor
Yeah.
No, Honor mode run.
It's my first For Honor run. I'm gonna, just so we can like capitalize, I'm gonna try and do this with just cantrips.
If you TPK, it deletes your save. and there's more difficulty added. And the
Yeah,
action
it's-
economy is slightly more limited.
It's harder difficulty by a number of means, and there are no do-overs.
And I am doing a 2 cleric rest sorcerer thunder thing.
I picked barbarian. I like smashing things.
We
You
love
get Anki.
hammer, Anki.
Hammer. Anki.
Oh yeah, and the bosses get more special actions. Like the spider one that I was terrified of and then never triggered. That shit was something.
Yeah. Ooh.
Okay.
Oh, that didn't hurt y'all that bad. You're fine.
I'm fine.
Oh, thanks for giving the gift sub I gave you.
Damn, do I even need to rage? I guess I will. Why not?
Yeah, you get a bunch of them bitches.
Right. Rage it up. Ooh, that recharges on a short rest?
What recharges on a short rest?
The gargantuan cleave thing.
Oh, yeah. That's a short rest one. I'm crab running from chat to chat.
Aye.
Think with portals.
Oh.
I want to go beat the shit out of Olanon, but that moonbeam spicy.
It really is.
Good. Trying to get me wet? It's working. Thank you. I was very thirsty.
Maruto is sitting in the middle of the screen. My bad. My bad.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna make that invisible. I didn't notice until you domed me in the head. Yeah, she's frozen. I'm having her on in the background just in case it somehow fixes itself.
Another day, another fight.
Ugh.
I wonder what your trouble is.
I have no fucking idea.
Maybe it's just your computer not happy with Boruto and this game at the same time.
But it's never done that before. Or I guess it has, but like never to this degree.
You've got health meds.
Bring back our entertainment? Where do I put her? Fine. Hold on.
Tuck her in the corner.
We're making her small and we're tucking her in the corner like a little action figure. There. Now you could dress up your doll and make her kiss.
Thank you, Nixie. I was very thirsty. Alright, is it my turn finally again? One thing that this fight's like, it's just the turn order is so long.
No, we are not slaughtering the grove. We're finding the shadow druids. And they're unnecessarily hot clothes.
Help me remember, Channel Divinity. Do you get it back on short rest?
Short rest. I swear it used to be long rest. I fucking swear.
Long rest too.
I'm literally gonna check right now about 5e.
Alright, Olaron's dead. Ooh, and it's my turn? Really?
Oh.
Yoink.
Short or long rest. That's fucking crazy. And I guess it's always been that way. And I'm just going senile. Oh, bye, Eldon.
Yoink.
Let's go.
Angie Barbarian.
Then it just ended? Fucking finally! She was streaming for 70 million hours!
Look, she went live at 3 a.m. for me when I went to bed. I was up late enough to say, good morning, Dennett, good night, Captain. And then she was still live when I woke up. I'm like, oh my god.
Hey.
You will face
like, Pop, you know.
If it's an argument you seek, we won't find it here. And move. Whatever the Tree Father's judgment.
Alright.
Wrath thought me a danger. Seems I've proven him right.
Yeah, I'll do that. That sounds like something I would say.
Hell yeah.
Or so I thought. Yet I betrayed Sylvanus himself.
I feel like
led the circle to shadow.
That's my big.
We will stop the right, and I will stand trial. My fate lies with Sylvanus.
What happened?
Nothing. Got confused. Literally got confused. Literally so dumb. I opened up Dennett to see where Dennett rated, and then I looked at that chat instead of mine, and I was like, "She rated us? No, she did not." I was like, "Speak of the devil, no." I was like, "How did this occur? She ended so long ago."
We will grant them safe harbor until they depart. Meanwhile, help us contend with the goblins. Perhaps we can dissuade
well,
them
now
from
that's too hippie-ish. No, we're going to kill everyone, Kaga.
yeah, we're not conformist here. I don't care about the Shadow Druids.
Also, oh, finally, okay. Until you talked to her, she hadn't dropped Moonbeam, and it was right on the stairs. I was like, we can't leave, brother. We live here now.
Yeah, this is our home. Oh yeah, we need to loot these bodies.
Pinta and Ren, who have nothing of value on them.
I got on.
Sick. Did she have anything cool?
She had magic ring.
Put my hands on everything.
The runes encircling this ring appear to have been scratched into metal with a rock. It is, oh wait, isn't that? Never mind. That's the ring that Mattis gave me.
Oh yeah, yeah.
She had leather armor, sword, poison arrow.
Oh, I didn't even
named.
take the other two's basic shit.
I scoop up everything, but you saw my Tarkov stash last night. I take everything.
Oh, yeah.
And then worry about it later.
I love the guys chilling here. They're just like, what now?
Koga lied to us.
Yeah.
She betrayed
It's
us.
over.
She didn't deserve your mercy.
Oh, did we?
Okay,
Did
didn't
we
ask.
talk to Alfina? Or Alfira, or
We
whatever
did
her name is?
not.
Let's do that. You got the charisma. You do the talking.
Sure. We also never talked to fucking...
I'm doing that right now.
Yeah. Wait, where the fuck is
Captain,
she?
I want to draw you with a big ass bow on your head. Do it.
Draw me like one of your French girls.
Draw me like one. Damn it, you beat me to it. Helta. Fine, Helta, I'll do
You
it.
were at the gates just now, no? When the goblins came?
Thank you. I was very thirsty.
You saw them up close? A few questions, if you please. There's no
Fine, ask your
glory.
questions.
There's no overstating my interest.
How would
All
you
right.
describe
Calm
that
down.
particular batch of goblins?
Oh, I didn't even stretch.
Size,
One of my favorite
nature,
characters of all time.
distinguishing
He is
qualities.
wonderful.
So funny.
Talking to him
So
on
funny.
my evil route has been like really enlightening as to the actual likable bits of him. The way he interviews evil people is like fascinatingly cool.
Yeah. Common variety goblins, led by Lasher and flanked by Booyah.
Damn, we know
A
things.
scholar after my own heart. Spent much time among goblins?
Oh yeah, I forgot I made him a scholar.
Ooh.
Whatever that time was spent among books. I'll say this though,
Shocking little
because I've been
creatures, aren't
fighting a
they?
lot of goblins.
Still,
Right.
there's quite a bit more to them
accidentally
than
blew
most
him up
accounts
once.
allow. I myself plan to record the world's most extensive
Damn,
catalog of their
Nixie.
means and habits. A blue ocean of information.
Out
I
here,
dare say. Now,
giving the full beams.
I've a few more questions, if you don't mind. And the
World's most
dragon they
famous
had
war
marching in the rear, wasn't it
newscaster
the
of all
brass
time. I
horse
fucking
silver
turned him to
variety?
paste.
Yeah.
I saved Scum. You're better of. You fucking
Yeah.
better of.
Do I like attack his notion of what's going on, or do I realize he doesn't know what he's talking about and have fun with it?
This will teach me a lot about Esker, so I defer to you. Would he be the type of person to catch on to what the fuck's going on, or would he just kind of flat?
Mistook
Yeah.
Oh.
He'd have fun.
silver dragon.
Esker would have fun with it.
Yeah.
Good
Lost
guy Esker
question.
would have fun
Then you'll
with it.
be quite
Well,
free.
not evil Esker
Did
would
the
have fun with
attackers
it.
Right.
rally to the absolute
Evil
when they
Esker would
fell
not
upon
be
the
here
gates?
right now. Evil.
Right. There's
Evil
no
Esker would be
overstating
here.
my disinterest. I'm leaving.
Yeah. Yes, they called his name out like a war cry.
They did, didn't they? Oh,
Yes, they did.
Curious. Oh, curious.
And there was
indeed.
dragons and
I've interrogated
And
us,
spiders.
a captive in this very cave. She reports they've abandoned their god.
I obliterated a guy with a train last night. Lucky him.
The scandal.
Wish someone would obliterate me with a train. Sorry.
I thought, okay, Nixie. I thought the train would nudge him off the tracks.
Girl. I thought it would be a gentle vehicular manslaughter.
I'm on my way to their camp as we speak. I always knew my studies in
It only
Cookliac
would
would
turn
come
him
to some
into
use.
a little bit of paste. Be careful.
Never you mind.
Confirmed,
Who
like
needs
it was a
mercy
question?
when you've a quick tongue, hmm?
And an invisibility potion stashed
What
in the
type
back
of train?
pocket.
Diesel steam electric.
Until we meet again.
What the fuck is a steam diesel?
Health out here asking the real questions.
Health out here being autistic, and we love her for it.
Well, technically, Steam. I can't talk.
Drama.
A steam engine still needs to be powered by combustion, so...
We could do my favorite interaction of all time.
Which one?
Talking to the bear.
If you insist. Just a moment.
Oh, yeah, you
This
could.
man is recording
yeah,
my story.
You can do it with her.
Yeah.
I was trying to be like, why? How can you do that now?
From home.
As the colourful man starts scribbling, the bear sneaks a quick look at the page. His brow furrows.
I need to quote the American Dad bit of
surround a
Steve being
crude
autistic.
sketch. The bear disemboweling a clutch of tieflings.
Come on. All the druids can understand me. You can. Why can't the man with the pen? I traveled a long
Yeah, do that.
way.
I want to see it.
The man nods thoughtfully and adds another dismembered limb to his sketch.
I love the bear speaking slower and slower.
Time friend. Alas, I've never learned to converse with your kind.
I love this game.
Come on. All the druids.
Oh, okay, it's the same thing.
Okay. Oh my god.
And we're listening to this full song. And no one's complaining about it.
No.
I love you, Alfira!
Words of mine
I'm sorry I have to concuss you in my dirge runs. But it's better than the alternative.
Yeah. Then you get nameless generic Mongolian throat singer for.
Damn it!
Wait, I haven't actually run in. What?
Oh.
What occurs?
Oh, nothing. Don't worry about it.
All right.
Play a dirge run where you save Alfira.
Okay, got it. Trust. I trust.
Save scum. Do a save scum and be prepared to for it for a while, or do 2 separate dirge runs. Do one with Alfira and one where you save Alfira.
Hmm.
And just look at the difference.
Yeah, we're ex-soldier. We'll do the I don't care for art and music. In battle, those two have never famously coincided to produce masterpieces. That's never occurred.
I should be
No,
but
no.
I need to finish this song. It's important.
Fucking smash the loot. Fucked up. Why would you do that?
What a bitch.
Right? If I continue to complain, I don't know that I get to help her. So, or listen to it rather. So I'll just be like, okay, fine, let's get it over with, so we can do the important stuff.
I have an extra loot, if you want.
Sure.
I'll start from the beginning.
Oh, you're doing.
We'll
Oh,
take
you're
it
going
slow.
full beans.
I got that's charisma, right?
Yeah.
Performance, yeah.
Yeah.
A warrior poet. I like that idea. That I'm like, no, fuck your music. Battle is for poetry. I can't bring my instruments get fucked up on the long marches. Singing there's no time for playing instruments on the battlefield, not because there's no time for art on the battlefield, but because this is impractical and heavy. Like what? I could thaumaturgy. Fuck, I should have turgied.
You should have turgied when you turgid.
Yeah.
Oh, it's getting very dark outside.
Ooh. Power outage. Cross fingers that won't happen.
Why would you even say that?
Because I enjoy tempting fate. Steam diesel train is a cursed child of a train. Diesel trains are insanely efficient compared to steam coke? We have coke trains? A steam diesel train, it replaced the coal box with a diesel boiler, instead usually retrofitting an older train to do so. I don't fully understand what's being said, but I fuck with the amount of knowledge you have on it. Son dying, don't worry about it? Oh, I was told not to worry about it.
If you got a question, just ask Kelta. She knows.
It's true. It's actually so true. Ah, we can Turgy.
Turgy.
And guidance stays up because it's a concentration thing for some reason.
Reason, yeah. I did know the Coke one.
Rest and know that I will pray. Farewell, my dear old friend.
Oh, cool. I thought we were running trains on drugs.
Sorry.
You gotta be sorry.
Oh, okay. I know why it's getting so dark. There is a metric fuck ton of rain literally like 5 minutes away from me.
Oh, not damn. The fact that you can see that far. I love the Midwest. Yeah. Who needs texture on the environment?
Hey, Maron.
Maron! Hello!
She'd have said the same thing. That's the first time I've played since
But
the
it does
Harlot
look like
died.
it's just rain. It's not like a bad thunderstorm. They said there might be some lightning and thunder, and a little bit of wind.
She was
but
playing her
nothing
lute.
Major.
Goody.
Didn't hear the Knolls coming. There was so much
This
blood.
furthers my advice. You shouldn't bring instruments into battle.
I can still smell it.
I'm just saying, I've never had someone sneak up on me while I'm writing poetry. Do you know about the knight who got like the most efficient?
I accidentally clicked on like an option.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I do like how it shows like our Steam profile picture. And
Right. Pikachu really wants you to click on this one.
Yeah. But anyway, you were saying?
There's a historical account of a knight who had like the most. He demanded the most like efficient and practical
keep the loot.
Prosthetic hand that had ever been designed because he wanted to be able to write poetry and still use a sword.
Yeah.
He also like is the first historical account of using the word fuckwit in like a poem or something like that. He's my hero. Every D&D character I've ever made is somewhat based on the vibes of that man.
Yeah. Do we want to get the bard hat in here just so we have one more thing to feed Gale that's not necessary for our current builds?
The bard hat? I didn't know we had a bard hat.
It's over here. We've been through this, girl.
Oh, that's right.
I have no thieves tools. That's all you.
Okay.
A couple turns should do it.
I have a -1.
Yeah.
But it's only a 10.
Yeah, you're fine. It's not a hard roll at all.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, I just kind of want to see how I look with it, actually. Just in case I like it.
Just in case you like it.
I don't hate it. I don't like it, but I don't hate it.
Gale needs to learn to eat real food, not boots and shit. I know.
Who am I to deprive a man his fetish? Okay, that's it for the Druid Grove, right?
Yeah. Oh, have you ever tried talking to those squirrels with speak to animals?
Yeah, they fucking hate her music, and I'm tempted to kill them, but it angers the whole grove, so I won't.
It's just so funny.
Show me again? Not now. We're working.
Open up.
All right, we have finished the grove portion of the adventure, so we can. I guess next would next be the camp at the rate we're going.
The Goblin Camp?
Or are we? Oh yeah, no, the wards.
Yeah. Let's go do the Knolls and maybe the city.
Yeah.
Joaquin's Rest.
Yeah. Okay, we can do that. I'm gonna fast travel to that one by the tax office or whatever that place is.
I like that you show up on the map so I can see you just pop into existence over there.
Yeah. Where is the coin over here?
Oh, it's
I
on the
always forget
roof.
It's on the roof? I'll go grab it.
Thank you.
I will go grab it.
Do we want to go do the Knoll asshole with bows, or do we want to do the big fight first?
I'll have to go in from the inside since this ladder's broke now.
Oh, whoops.
But
might have been me.
Might
have been Karlach, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah, I imagine it was probably when Karlach had, like, her justified shit fit.
Something good here,
Right.
I hope.
And we love a justified shit fit. We love an unjustified shit fit, to be honest.
Always room for more.
Sometimes you just gotta get pissed.
Don't want to draw
it's A-okay.
Mm-hmm.
Best be on my way.
Let's see, can I jump? Oh, it's on the balcony. Okay, I see now.
Oh, yeah, it's outside on the roof.
Yeah. I'm gonna give you, since you're running with Karlach, I'm gonna give you all the soul coins I found.
Oh, speaking of, she wants to talk about it.
Don't mind if I do.
So, hey, we've got this soul coin, right? Thing is,
Did you go in through the cave, or are you going around?
I'm not going into the cave. I trick that fucking boulder every goddamn time. I refuse to fuck with it.
Nah.
That's my favorite Karlach line of all time. If you were listening into that,
I can't even on the tail end. Which part?
You fucking, I can use that soul coin. Aren't you afraid it'll overload your engine? Nah, it'll be fine. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, but I fuck with
Sort of. Next time we find ourselves toe to toe with something we want to squash, drop a coin in. See what happens.
Just a heads up on my end, we got to add starting in 5 minutes.
Oh
Now
my
I just need something to
god,
sink my
what a
teeth into.
coincidence. Oh, whoops.
What happened?
They walked up while I was
whoops.
talking to Karlach, so now we are doing this. I'm gonna send my main girl all the way around so I can get the jump on them. Eventually, Karlach will hold initiative. Someday. Sorry, I'm just gonna sneak around this way. You're gonna come this way? Alright.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing? Don't mind me.
Oh, they're looking. Okay, I see what they're at.
Yeah.
I'm going this way. No one can put me in ad jail. No, the homies don't get ad jail.
That's goddamn right.
Best be on my way. Breathe deep.
Me when I'm a fucking founder.
What's inside?
Me when I'm an OG.
You know what? You're being difficult. We're going back this way. Hang tight. I know I can't pass a stealth check, and no matter there's a gap there, but it's not letting me use it. So I'm going around the long way.
Peanut butter jelly the long way.
Peanut butter and jelly the long way.
Okay, I'm gonna thunder wave these guys back here.
Okay. Alert, BRB, gotta get food. Enjoy your food.
Ready for another round?
Okay. Oh, I can't use bonus actions. No. You are a mile away from him on my screen.
Yeah. It's acting funny right now.
We fuck with it.
Oh, he got knocked out. Oh, that's because the pommel strike was what finished him.
Hey, I have my thingy back. Should I rage? Or should I save it?
I'd save it.
Yeah, I think so too.
This fight's not terrible.
It can be, but we actually got a really good drop on these guys, so.
Yeah. Already have one down.
Go on, walk away from me. Ah, Jesus!
Ooh, oh no. Oh no. Okay.
Should have raged. I'll just pop her up.
Of course you saved.
Oof.
Cut your fire, baby.
I don't know that I want to rage now. Oh, that sucked. At least we haven't threatened. Yep, there that goes. Fucking brutal.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna go take care of you. Okay.
I am done fucking with these people.
I hit with the ensnare, so I'm no longer worried. But fuck, that was bad.
She had her bonus from missing the first time with True Strike and still missed.
Oh yeah, no, the shield's useless. Those who can't hit, can't hit. That's... Cool.
Go get your girl up.
God damn it. What do I even do about you?
I'd love to, thanks.
I'm gonna do a short rest.
No time to rest.
I guess. Fuck.
I'll feel that one later.
Okay.
Alright. Go do the big...
Never mind.
The big null fight.
Yeah.
What path lies before me?
Sounds good to me.
Anything of use?
Do that, and then I will be out of rages, so we'll have to
Long
actually
rest?
sleep again.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to long rest after this one.
Good enough. Should I... Hold on. Ah, stop! Stop moving! Here's my options. Should I use my channel divinity max damage thing on the big guy, or should I save it because we can try and convert him? Or not save it. Should I use it on 2 others, rather?
I'm gonna say follow your heart.
Okay.
I'm impartial to either option.
Ooh! Wow, they're walking over here. Okay, I'm gonna turn base it as soon as they stop staring at me. Stop staring at me! Finally. Okay.
I'm gonna be right in the paint. I'm full HP and I've got 1 more rage left.
Hell yeah. Okay. Chromatic Thunder. Now I can do the thing, by the way. The awesome fucking thing.
Oh, yeah.
We'll tag you, and we'll wrath it. 64 damage. Never fucking heard of her.
Jesus Christ. You fucking killed that thing.
Hear that? Someone's fighting the
I'm going to have to go for a bit.
We should help.
Have a good rest of your day if I don't see you, Andy.
Fool, lad. Shut your mouth and
Bye,
keep your head
David.
down. Leave the heroics to them that don't value their own skin.
There we go. I was wondering what she was doing. Oh, I'm still.
Whisper.
You know what? Fuck it. We'll get in there.
I'm pulling Karlak to the side, and then she's gonna get in there as well.
I will immediately work on Flynn. And we're gonna do
Nothing important is ever easy.
that. Go back to her. And oh wait, warding bond's melee. Damn it! I should have done that before we started. I forgot it's a melee. Spell effects. Ooh.
Bye.
Best be on my way.
Saved. Okay. That's a good turn.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, if you want to start clearing the field, we'll just focus on him.
Hmm.
Paralyzed?
Yeah.
Hold up.
And he can't be disarmed. Oh, cool. Oh, thank God we got the surprise round so I could get Karlach raging.
Yeah, it's handy. Oh, even though there's like a target like 5 feet from it.
Auto crit? How could they resist? I wouldn't be surprised if everyone comes for you.
They usually do.
Hmm. Preach, King.
Anyway.
Why don't you go...
You do that. And...
Away. Does he have concentration on paralysis? Oh, you're already out of it. Okay. You're good.
Yeah.
You're Gucci. Oh, I should have thunder waved that. I don't know why I didn't. Oh well. Whatever.
Still raging, despite all my rage.
Are we still just a rat in a cage?
For my first trick, you guys cease to exist. Ah, close enough.
I wish
My
it wouldn't
second
pull up
trick-
your pop-ups.
Yeah, I know. And I can trip this? No. He's almost out anyway, so even if he does that again, and I've got good HP reserves. I see you, Druid. So about those HP reserves.
Yeah, we spent them. Don't worry, I'm coming over.
They are very upset at me. I do not think they have enough action economy to get me though.
No.
Especially since I was focused on you. Okay.
Fuck yes.
You first.
Oh damn, you got him. Got his ass.
You second.
Time to push my luck again.
Game? Oh my god. There we go.
Oh, you got his ass. Cool.
Clearing the field in one turn.
We're fucking done with those guys.
Yeah, fuck that. You've been putting some work up. Really?
That's fucked up.
Why am I in every single one of these games I play? I am the target.
I have no idea, but it happens so often.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I keep shoving him down there, but I guess keeping him up here isn't stopping him from attacking you anyway.
Just out of range, so I'm just gonna keep myself up.
Okay, ensnare you and then go get in melee with this guy, so at least they have disadvantage on everything.
Good.
No, hold on. I want this. Okay, now you can do it.
Cry about it.
Oh, is he dead?
Yeah.
Whoops. Alright.
Whoopsies. I didn't think it would hit that hard. I bet it attacked me. Yep. Yep.
Okay, we're fucking done with you.
Oh, okay. Now he wants to talk to me. Why is it me?
God, are any of my crew still alive out there?
This
No,
whole
it's a grim
journey's
sight.
been one
It's very
grim
bad, dude.
sight after
It's
another.
very bad.
Gnolls, goblins.
Did you see that nautilus fall out of the sky? What are you even
Prison
doing here?
road's more
Right.
dangerous than ever. You're the first friendly face.
Actually,
we've seen
maybe he
since
hasn't. Maybe
Eltergard.
he's been in this fucking cave.
We're bound for
Yeah.
Baldurs Gate. Got some cargo to deliver. But we've a stop to make along
And then
the
he doesn't
way.
talk about it later. He's the one NPC in this fucking area that goes, wow, that's none of my business.
Joaquin's Rest. It's just up the road. I'd be enjoying a mug of ale right now if those beasts hadn't jumped us.
Oh no, but there's a little bit of problem
Listen,
up the road too.
You look like you know how to handle yourself. You should meet my associates. We've got our own drinking spot by the tavern. Invitation only.
I'm gonna be
Tell
honest.
the fellow on the
I would
door.
love to have what's in that
Little
case, but I'd also
serpent,
love to be able
long
to peruse
shadow.
their store.
Yeah, their store's
take
really
good care
good.
of you.
Their store's really good.
I
not
fucking
doing
love
that.
every Berserker option. No, it would be insane
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah, 'cause he's supposed to be an intelligent berserker. But the berserker ones are so goddamn funny.
I was talking to my dad about playing this fucking game, and he was a berserker barbarian, and he accidentally killed every important NPC because he left the dialogue options too much, and he picked them every time.
I have a gift for you.
He showed up at fucking for me.
Yeah.
He showed up at the like
Worm.
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 Yum.
And I'll give the shattered flail. I may start using that with Shadowheart. I don't know. I do like the reach. The spear.
The
It's more there for
spear
just
doesn't
protection.
have reach. The one-handed
It
spears.
does- Oh yeah, you're right. It doesn't have reach.
She might go crazy, but having a self-heal option is nice.
Yeah. Crazy.
What was I gonna
crazy
say?
once.
Yeah, the inn in the second act where you like spend most of the time. He showed up there, told the fucking Jaheira that he'll turn her skull into a piss pot, and then killed everyone there.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. My guy is
Berserker
not an
barbarian.
emotional storytelling person.
Nappy nap.
Nappy nap.
Or, you going to get some more stuff from over here?
I remember there being a barbarian thing in here. It's not very good, but it is something.
The rest of our crew's half digested, and you're still alive. That's lucky.
Anything? Oh, wrong
It's
button.
when you
Nope.
voluntarily end your rage, so it's like
Watch how you go.
almost
yeah.
never useful.
I'm fine.
Don't give me trouble now.
More importantly.
Okay.
Oh, I have 10 hit points left. That could have been bad.
Nah.
Cherry. Hey, Cherry, who's missing Astarion? No one.
No,
Although-
I love my red flag boy. I had a passionate night
Yeah.
for him, but we will be going no farther than that.
Yeah. That's on par for you. I can fix him type.
I can't. I will never say I can fix anyone, but
Damn, Pat, just
I
say
can
thank
enjoy
me.
them as they are.
Trust me. I got my girlfriend. Dark hair, brooding thoughts, brooding attitude.
Mm.
Would rather punch me than hang out with me.
You're a strange man.
Anything back? No, there's nothing back here.
Here are my two options, Cap, in my brain, in my heart of hearts.
Could you even pick Karlak? I'm letting Moth have a turn with Karlak. My turn was last run.
You know, I might give Karlak back to camp and take Lae'zel.
Really? Is it looking like that?
I just... She's very sweet. This is not the character that's gonna be very sweet to people. I'm helpful, but like...
Oh, okay, yeah. If you're going at it from a like a narrative character thing, that would be Lae'zel.
Yeah, I think.
Get Lae'zel.
Okay. Oscar.
Stepped on fire.
I guess we're gonna take a nap anyway, but like.
Nice
Whoops.
little.
Yeah, please, please.
All right.
Did you know that if you're Tiny Race in Romance Carlac, you ask for uppies when you hug her? Oh my god.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I did see a video of that.
Okay, take these barbarian gauntlets. I will feed them to Gale later, but for now you can hold them.
Yeah.
Do you want? Does anyone want a fucking scimitar?
No.
Okay.
Put it in the cell pile.
Yeah.
Jerry, how you doing today?
I see. That will be useful later. A surprise gift that will be helpful later. Okay.
Something's on my
That Mickey
mind.
Mouse bit. That's a surprise tool we'll use for later.
Speak.
Speak. I love her. I'd like for you to hang out with me.
Dismiss someone first.
And I will.
Ready for battle.
Oh yeah, I did see that video. Or a video of it.
I am gonna turn
remember that.
Lae'zel into a dex build though, as promised.
The only reason I remember it is because it looked fun before. They had to make that happen before a certain point in like the updates and fixes in the
shall be
game.
here in thy
You just went in for a hug like normal, so she was just like hugging your head.
Mm-hmm.
If you were like a dwarf or something.
She has a +2. Do I want to turn her into a dex build?
Eating PB yogurt and banana parfait with granola. That sounds really fucking good.
God, that does. I do not have enough parfaits in my life. I think that's a general thing that many people could share.
Oh, I thought I was about to sneeze.
Captain, what should I do with this woman?
What are you trying to do?
Do I want to make her a dex build so she can do bow stuff and do her battle master things, or
Will that hurt her helping me on the front line?
no? It would make her it would make her do slightly less damage typically.
I mean, you follow your heart. If you think it'll help and you want to try it, try it. What's the worst we have to do? Come back here and give 100 gold?
This is true.
Yeah. We have so much of it.
I'm thinking. I could also make her an Eldritch Knight.
You could.
Get some wizard spell slots. No, you know what? We're gonna keep her exactly as she is. She's perfect. I don't know what I'm thinking.
No one stopped me yet.
Hey.
What? I'm
Fuck
sitting
off.
down over here.
Okay.
If you break my chair. If you.
Yeah. Run away. Yeah. Hey, what the fuck? I didn't do nothing. I was literally just standing here next to you the whole time.
Oh my god, I can't get the hitbox. No, you don't.
Bully him. Ah! Oh, my turn first, it looks like. Ah, shit. Okay, long rest.
Damn, you're bleeding. What happened?
Huh. I fucking wonder. I'm taking a long rest. Give precious baby his rages back. Oh, wait. Wait, they gave him his clothes back for this cutscene. We're just matching. We're just... Oh my god, Slay!
What up, Twinkies?
Hey, not me. We're twonk at best.
Well, You've
Zora.
been naughty.
Oh,
And you know what happens when you're naughty.
good things.
Damn.
God damn it. Anyone but her.
Why do they make being bad look good?
So true. I love that if you say this, everyone fucking hates you for it. They're like, hey man, what the fuck?
What the fuck? Yeah.
Well, you absolute stinker.
Are there even any ugly people at all in this game? No.
Kind of
Time
real.
to let the Hellcat out of the bag. Call
You
me
can't. You can't
Mizora.
come to punish Will
I'm
because you don't
Will's
know which one of us
patron,
is the real
the
one.
founder
Except for
of his
Gortash.
power. My pet.
Gortash hurts to look at.
I know.
Yeah, Jerry. Yeah. Yeah.
We had a deal, Will. But
Based
Carla's still
chatters.
breathing.
Always.
I've taken more pleasant
There was-
shits
I
than you,
remember
Mizora. And at least those
Some
can
early
be
like
buried
depiction
after.
art of Gortash.
That's no kind of talk for a lady.
They really
By the
gave
way,
him a
Carla,
downgrade.
Zariel
It fits him.
sends her regards.
Originally, it was gonna look like
You
a
told me!
ladies' man, like a lady
Devils
killer.
only! She's a tiefling, not a monster!
How precious. The little pupsters.
He still
found
looks
his
like he
bar.
thinks he's a lady killer,
Clause
which I
G,
fuck with.
Section 9. Target shall
Yeah.
be limited to the infernal, the demonic, the heartless, and the soulless.
As soon as your devil's
Heart meets the
contract
criteria by
includes
virtue
like
of having
turn
no
of
heart.
phrase, heartless.
You say
Fucking-
that about Gortash, but like he has a confidence about him like that, but it's not like a good confidence. A healthy
No, it's
confidence.
bad.
It's like a college frat boy confidence,
Yeah.
which is not a good confidence.
Don't you worry.
Oh, Cherry.
That ship has long sailed the Styx. But a defiant pup must still
Sometimes
pay
being
his
bad
price.
is good.
No.
To wit,
Cherry, get him. Cherry, fucking get him.
Will burns in the fires of Avernus. The lightning storms of Dis strike his flesh. His soul passes through each layer of the hells, gaining their essence.
I'm not going to say
And their
every run
torment.
he doesn't have horns, but occasionally there's runs he doesn't have horns.
Occasionally.
Look, listen.
Yeah.
that's
Drown the man.
If you're gonna do
What
an
the
evil
hells
run,
have you done?
do the evil run.
promise
That's all I'm
broken,
saying.
a
If you're
price
gonna do it,
paid.
commit to it.
you know the terms.
But if I'm doing an evil run,
Get used to the new form.
Will doesn't want to fucking hang out with me anyway, because I've murdered a bunch of fucking refugees.
Some magic, even I
Hashtag not
can't
my
undo.
streamer.
Yeah.
Let's see how the frontiers
Okay.
fare
All
without
right, guys.
that precious
All right, we'll see you
blade.
next week.
Keep an eye on him, would you?
And that's all for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great. That's my time.
Oh wait.
Oh,
Hold on.
and Will,
Did that? Never mind. Okay, good.
don't
I thought it
forget,
killed my.
our
yeah,
pact
I thought it
still
killed my scene for a
stands.
second.
What are you doing in there?
I said we'll see you next time and clicked over to my ending scene.
Oh.
And when I clicked back over, it was just a black screen.
Uh-oh.
My OBS I was like, uh-oh.
Let's get going.
The blade of frontiers
Oh, hey.
in the guise of a
Will wants to
devil.
talk.
I'd
You can-
remark
I'll
on
let
the
you.
irony,
I'll let you
but I'd
handle
hate
that.
to waste
All
the
right.
breath. Still,
I'm talking to my angry
it took
lizard
guts
girlfriend
to
first.
defy that petty patron
Anyways,
of
I'll be
his.
back never because
The
my
blade's
career
sting
is
is
over.
real.
Oh my god, I can flirt with Lae'zel. Hold on. Will, shut up. I know your whole life is ruined. Just wait. Just fucking wait a second.
Stop right now. Hold the fucking break.
I have a confession.
Uh-oh.
I was too hasty to judge you.
Uh-oh.
Oh my god, so
I thought
sweet.
you witless.
Thanks.
Gutless.
Mm-hmm.
Unimpressively bland.
I hope this tune changes.
Yeah, keep going.
Can I assume a compliment is incoming?
I don't pay compliments. I only say what is true. You've proven me wrong at every turn. You are efficient, dominant, courageous.
Oh my
I
god.
swear, you would tear the horns off one dragon for plunging into another. You've gained more
Thanks.
respect,
I don't think I could,
and
but
more still,
I appreciate it.
I just see Will's exclamation point behind you.
Hey, my life is over. Can you stop trying to fuck right now? Oh. If you respect me so much, why are you such a prickly grouch? It's fucked up. I have one word, yuck. Why can I be so mean to her?
Will watching you get
He can wait. He can wait.
Yeah.
Hold.
In the name of Basil.
Sure, we'll play
Hey,
Clueless for
hang
a second. I love when she rolls her eyes at me.
Isn't it obvious? I want to taste you. Perhaps tonight. Perhaps later. But
I have an
want it
option to
always
check after this conversation.
You do have an option to check after this conversation.
Sure think I've been wanting a hockey thanky girlfriend? I hope she stabs you if you say this. I hope she becomes perma-aggroed. I hope her immediate response is, ew, no.
In the name of Follicle, he doesn't want to wait.
Yes.
Oh,
Perhaps
my
one
face
night
hurts.
soon, I will come to your bunk and take what is mine.
Oh my god.
Until that night comes,
I will say,
I shall keep enjoying your scent.
holy shit. I will say, I do really love the intimacy differences between the different romances. Like, Lae'zel is physical first, and that is just real as fuck. Some people are like that. Like, that's less closeness than being emotionally vulnerable. And that matches her character really well.
Very well.
Nope. We'll untick that really quick. Though technically you can do it and they'll have like skin colored underwear on, but I don't know that I want to chance it.
Yeah, no, do not chance it. Do not chance it.
All right, Will. What the fuck? What are you on about?
God's damn her, straight back to the hells.
I think that's where
Just
she
look
went.
at me. I did what was right, and Mazora made me pay for it.
I feel like you got off kind of
I'd be
easy.
hunting devils and demons, she said. Traitors and hypocrites, heartless evils of all sorts, but not Zariel's victims. Not innocent tieflings.
Oh, well, you don't know shit.
I don't know shit about fuck.
I don't know shit about fuck. boss.
Intelligence. I never heard of her.
Yeah.
Arcana. Can you shut the fuck up? Thank you. I'll be here all week.
Boo.
But what the fuck? Why? I have horns and look even hotter now. That's what I'm saying. -2. Die. Fucking. Speaking of, where'd my -2 7DV emote go? I swear I had one. Cherry, you have the best emotes of all time, and you keep
She's got
flexing them
really
on
good
me, and
emotes.
it's fucked up.
Really good emotes and really good channel redeems.
I haven't caught. I'm following. I haven't seen. When do you stream? Cherry, advertise yourself on someone else's stream right now.
Bam. Merry Christmas.
I'll say what I can.
Oh
but
yeah.
It won't be enough.
I be following.
It's Mazora
It just
who grants me the
my
power
notifications.
to conjure armor and cast eldritch blasts.
They're busy.
Before I was infected,
And they ignore some people
I
for
could
some
even
reason.
call
I don't know.
hell beasts
Twitch
and
does that
summon
fucking
festering
thing.
clouds.
I know.
But
I hate the
I promise
notification
you,
system on Twitch.
every
It's so
thrust
stupid.
of my blade and every flame I sparked was for the good of the coast.
Every eldritch you blast. He eldritch my blast till I ejaculate inside him.
Streaming a oh yeah, you're still on the Resident Evil 4.
In a couple hours. Let's go.
Leon.
Typically on Fridays. I will keep that in mind. You should probably get out of the pact.
Yeah,
Well,
you should probably stop
No,
this,
no,
man.
no. This character was a warlock originally, so probably wouldn't say that. Probably just be like, nah, like you can maneuver it. I'm sure
I can't
you can wiggle
utter
it.
the terms or circumstances of the pact. I can tell you most all else, but the pact, I'm forbidden, unless Mizora permits it. But I'll say this. The moment I pacted myself to Mizora, I have not regretted for a heartbeat. It was my proudest deed.
Yeah.
It was worth the sacrifice.
Mm.
All I can give you on that is my solemn word.
And that's been so good lately.
Yeah. Oh, your other girlfriend wants to talk to you as
Feeling
well.
Will got off lightly.
Hell yeah.
The wrath of the hells is second only to the wrath of the heavens.
She is going to be a little upset because I did flirt with her and then immediately go for the lizard. But what you gonna do?
Never a dull day, is
I'm
there?
gonna be honest. Almost every time that she happens to get to that threshold on loyalty where she wants to have an interaction with you is when you're actively pursuing someone else.
Yep.
For me.
I'll be honest, soldier. I'm reeling. Will
That is a
hardly
cute
knows me, but he chose my life over his.
Body
It's
is
an important
full of
moment.
sandwich, and now my body's
Been a long
ready to
time
be a
since
part of a
someone
sandwich.
stuck their neck out for me like that.
Never change.
Count
Get
me in.
worse.
Count me in. Where's our third? Oh, hey, Captain. You busy later?
Maybe. Busy with you two. Anyway.
You can say that again.
I will say
When he
this
was chasing
line
me through
of like
Avernus, I
really
thought he was
praising
just
Will
another
is
sad
very
merc.
fitting for the way I
How
like
wrong
meeting
I
Will
was.
and immediately hating on him, immediately being like, "I'll fucking kill you," and then he does this. It's like, okay, actually, he's a really good dude. Fine.
Let me talk to my girlfriend real quick.
Yeah.
Mizora flies into the blades of a windmill for what she did to Will.
Also weirdly sweet from Shadowheart.
Though
Yeah.
I must
And
admit,
accurate.
The new look is a little dashing.
It is a little dashing. Okay. So true, bestie. So,
all right.
If you, as yourself and your own personality, was a character in here, what relationship would you have with each person?
I would immediately not get along with Will.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Will has an energy that I do not vibe with.
He's a theater kid.
Yeah, theater kid is one way. Like I said, he gives the air of like I use big words to sound smart.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, I would definitely, honestly, I wouldn't say like me and Gale would be like best friends. We would definitely get along.
Right.
Like Will and Gale, it's the person that uses big words to sound smart versus the person that knows big words because they are smart.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, I feel like some people would get like similar opinions about them at first glance, just because all you do is just run around and use big fancy words. Yeah, like Gale just uses them because that's all he's known, because his head's been in a book.
Yeah, I relate with, respect, and love someone who just obviously has read more than they've talked to people, because same, brother. Fucking same.
Yeah. Mood twin.
I say shit wrong all the time because I have only ever seen it written. Like,
honestly, as much shit as I give him as a character, Astarion, I think me and Astarion would be like the type of homies that would be like attached at the hip. It's like Astarion walks into the bar. Oh, where's Captain? He should be here soon.
I respect it. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. What about our ladies?
The ladies, I feel like I would be on friendly terms with Karlach, but probably wouldn't hang out a lot. Just like when I was like, oh, they're, I don't necessarily hang out with them, but I've never had a bad word to say about them.
Right. Makes sense.
I feel like I would argue a lot with Karlach.
Yeah.
Or not Lae'zel.
Oh, yeah. The angry racist? Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, I feel like we would debate each other till we were purple in the face.
Yeah, debate holding a lot of tension in the word.
Yeah. I like, you know.
And you would be pursuing our favorite emo?
Oh yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, and all like that. I literally know people that are carbon copies of this in real fucking life. I spent way too much time at the pub. At a shithole dive bar. I know that type of person. I fuck with that type of person.
And then most importantly, obviously, Withers. Withers and his massive titties.
I know Withers would be the guy. It's like just that one person in the group that's like fucking ancient. It's like you.
I lead. You.
Sorry, hold on. Nothing. No. Keep talking. I'm not doing anything.
So
Do I
you think?
Is
Let's
it?
see if you're right.
I don't know.
I'm not,
No, I think I turned it off too late.
I'm watching before
I turned off stream. I turned off the game tracking. Perhaps you should as well. I turned off the magic box.
I'm watching everybody. I'm watching everybody
sleep
in bed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've turned it
just to be
off.
safe.
I could turn it back on. Oh no, she's naked.
Oh, saved by the magic box.
It's
like
a
that
half-orc
romancing him
race
makes you feel like a
option to tell
princess.
her she submits to me. I don't fuck with that.
Cherry, I like that romancing him makes you feel like a princess, but I just need my angsty vampire. Funny, snarky Sundere is your kryptonite. Yeah, that's fair. That I get it.
Yeah.
Not for me, but I get it.
Yeah. No, he's good. He's good.
It would not be for me, and I have to mess with people that think that way of him again, because that type, like I hang out with that type of person. I hang out with an Astarian like mindset person, and I like see what women like he does to women, and it's like I know this in real life.
She's sniffing and licking my neck, just in case anyone needed an update on what was happening. She's
I can't believe that turning that setting off. There's a time gate on that.
Oh yeah. I think I would have had to restart
the game. Yeah.
The game told me I'm a lapdog. Never has domination tasted so good and felt so freeing. Narrator, I'm discovering that you're into things.
the narrator is down bad.
Damn.
Down ferocious, possibly. I like how everybody's just laying here snoring while you're having the time of your life off scene.
Yep.
off scene in game, off scene in stream.
Sorry, just to relay the lines happening. I had a great time last night. Of course you did. I am as extraordinary in bed as I am on the battlefield. Okay, Queen. We love confidence.
Yeah. Hold on, I want to see something real quick. And click. And click back. Yep, okay. And click back. There we go.
Okay.
And done nappy.
And the magic box is back on.
Saved by the magic box. Unbiased narrator, my ass.
I do love. Have you seen the videos of the narrator's outtakes?
Oh yeah.
So fucking funny.
All right, so Joaquin's Rest next.
Joaquin's Rest.
Yeah. Do you care if I run to the restroom real fast?
I was literally about to do the same. Do we want to run an early ad?
Yeah, let's do an early ad. I'm gonna run a 3-minute ad break while I run to the restroom. We'll be right back, folks.
All right. I have returned. Spooks, I'm so sorry. We'll be right back, but I'm gonna play some music for you.
Yeah, me too. That and...
Sits patiently in Twitch Turbo. Cherry, we're one and the same.
Trying to be somebody, thought that I was different, just a carbon copy, lost in the illusion if I'm winning or I'm losing. Thought that I was different, that was a delusion. Wonder what it might.
Hey, anybody think it's called sand because it's in between the sea and the land? you did miss Bazel. You did miss me and Bazel having a wonderful time.
Do you think it's called rust because it's just red dust?
Holy shit, he's cooking. He's cooking.
Oh my god. I'm so fucking smart.
And I've always said that.
And I believe that shit.
We came back with 5 seconds left on the ad. Are we like the best streamers to ever fucking do it?
Ads in sync.
Cycles.
Piss in sync. And sometimes toilet.
Hey, wait a minute. Tree will hear about this. Ray as a tree will hear about this.
God. Criminally funny.
Criminally fucking funny.
I need to catch more of Tree's.
I haven't seen him stream in a sec.
I know. The hardest, when I say real quick, the hardest I have ever laughed was when Tree cosplayed you.
Oh my god. That was brutal.
During the paint drying saga.
Oh shit! Sorry, I yanked you into the battle. Oh, you're not that far behind.
No, I'm not that far behind. It was, it was during the paint drying simulator saga that we all experienced.
Oh, and we did.
And Tree had it like in the background of the stream, and I got in there. I was like, "Oh, hey, Moth, how's the paint drying?" And Tree went, "Oh, let me check," and took the time to turn the entire model around. It's like looking good.
Like
fucking die.
So fucking funny.
Make way.
Get that up there, just so we get some stuff working.
What the fuck?
But yeah, just he's like, hold on, let me check. Drags model, turns model backwards to look at. Now I just didn't like yoink your model. Like took the time to make their model look like you.
It was so fucking funny. You can tell. Hey, I love all my creeps equally. You can tell who the fucking real ones are by who has the Paint Watcher tag on their fucking profile.
I can't wait for Paint Drying Simulator 2 to come out.
Oh, that will be a day.
Granted, that was probably just simply farming Bitcoin on your computer the entire time.
Oh yeah. Honestly, it'd be a waste if it wasn't. What else are you doing?
Yeah.
That was a time. I cannot believe we 100%ed Paint Drying Simulator.
Drying Simulator. For those that don't know, it's Paint Drying Simulator on Steam. All you do is watch a brick wall that's been painted dry for 6 hours. And then when the 6 hours is up, you pick another color and do it again.
Damn, Transgender Jesus Christ replied to me in the Discord. Speaking of the Discord, told me they can't absolve us of our sins, so no TPKing today. What?
Oh.
I was so sure, Druid, that you had the paint drying role.
I think Druid started coming around after the Paint Drying Simulator.
Who am I thinking of? There was someone.
Wow. See, Eva is popping off.
What?
Really? Went straight for her? Okay.
Damn. Crit City.
Damn.
Crit Central.
Oh.
We love a riposte.
Yeah. Riposte?
Riposta.
Replace? I just work here.
I literally just work here. Man, my guy fucked off and told us.
Blinded. Oh, never mind. Missed.
It makes it harder to get out of there. But that's about it.
Jesus, what a jump.
Strength.
Strong.
Okay, I am going to turn this wizard to paste.
Do it. Oh my god.
We are absolutely not fucking with that.
You did exactly what you said.
I love this build so much. Transgender Jesus Christ! Hey, I was just talking about you. What do you mean you can't absolve my sins a day early? Come on! How's your baby shower going?
I'm gonna get to go one day.
Someday. Oh, this is a battle of watching people take their turn, for sure. And everyone has 2 attacks except us.
Yeah, we have not reached that point yet. And cease. Oh, whoops.
And fucking be gone.
Cut that shit out.
Wow, they're critting the fuck out of this man.
Yeah. Why me? I haven't even gotten in the fight yet.
Ogre? I hardly know her. This is why I'm kissing you. On the deal.
Lightning detected 10.6 miles from your location.
Internet is killing me? Rough. Fucking rough. You have a lightning detected thing? I guess that is pretty close for lightning to be.
Alright. We're now here.
Yippee!
And intern, because I can't do anything else.
You know what? I respect the shit out of it. Save that streak. Go streaking in our chats. Take your clothes off. Now put your clothes back on. Oh, fuck! They're gonna have that ogre dead before you get a chance to swing, Cap.
I know. It's fine, though. I'm just in time to like take some hits, like get hit.
To talk shit. No, we can't let Eva die. She's done so much fucking work.
I know. Alright, I'm just gonna start sending him over that way.
Should I try and finish off the little scared raider over here?
Jesus Christ, what are those evil?
I think I will. What's going on? Oh shit! Oh shit! Throwing it back!
Jesus Christ, throwing it back. Throwing it out in the yard.
It's a real... It's a good day for the world.
Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna plug one into the ogre. Why not?
Yeah. Perfect.
And then...
This entire combat may end without me actually doing anything with Esker. And that's gonna be so funny.
Right? I showed up, I got angry, and then it was over.
Yep.
And I'm gonna fly inside this building.
Seems like the best way.
Ooh, frog in my throat.
Damn. I don't even know what the spell that was.
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting there's an archer out there. I have to do something about that soon.
Raise to the dawn. Oh.
Although he's doing it himself because he's running out to shoot and then he's going back to hide but standing in fire to do it.
Yeah. Oh. L.
So this might be a self-correcting issue.
Right. This one might just figure itself out.
Critical miss after upscaling it to level 2. Love
yeah,
that.
love to see it.
Cancel and you'll pick me up. Now we end the turn.
Taking position.
Oh, that's right. I have the crazy jump going on. Fuck it.
Yeah,
let's go say hi to our friend.
Hi, friend. Jesus Christ, I forget how far that jump is.
Oh yeah, Githyanki have essentially flight. They were just they're always too scared to give player characters innate flight.
Yeah.
So they give us jump.
Oh, my turn?
There goes my internet. Have a great rest of your time, Transgender. Jesus Christ, we love you.
Have a good day. Alright, for my first trick.
Oh yeah, get him.
For my second trick.
We saved Eva, which means we don't get to loot her corpse, but that's okay.
That's okay. I think they still get mad if you try.
Yeah, but like, they're not watching. They're occupied.
Alright, all that's left's the archer. I'm just gonna...
With haste.
You're not needed anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, anyway.
Damn.
See what I'm saying? He's standing there in fire.
It's okay.
Self-correcting issue.
I'm about to turn him to paste. Speaking of standing in fire.
Yeah.
Woo! Nah, I'll just throw something. Wait a minute.
Yeah, okay, it's just outside of my range, so it's all you.
Okay. I forgot to give her back her throwing his thing. There we go. Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Flick of the wrist.
Oof. Okay. Do you have Dex? Honestly, Lae'zel has better Dex than this. Hold on.
Enough waiting.
Make her do it.
I crave blood.
Character sheets. No. Nothing I got's Dex. Strong Dex. While you sort that out, I'm looting the goblins.
I suppose, honestly, I have such high strength, I could probably just get through this shit. Or the barbarian does get to roll with advantage on this. Have you ever done this interaction?
Excuse me, Druid's trying to get me wet.
Lucky you.
I think you guys very thirsty. Anyway, what interaction?
Where you talk to the guards pushing the door?
Yeah, I've done it. Oh, wait, hold on, I'm a barbarian.
Yeah. Oh.
Could be inside. Don't just
Oh, you already got it.
Push.
Yeah.
You got this. You're strong and you crit.
We take those. Fuck yeah! That's my wife. That's my fucking wife. She beats the shit out of me, and I like it. Sorry. Other reasons. I'm a fan of her.
And we go here. We get so much stuff. Drow Raider.
Oh. I don't know how to get out of here. I've accidentally fucked myself.
Lightning Blast, and Superior Time, Home State.
Okay, that's good stuff. Like that. Oh yeah, there's a guy up here.
Eager for battle.
I make this jump. I can make this jump.
I wasted a first level spell slot because I figured it would be vulnerable to the damage. Wife, save me! Thank you.
With a lot on my mind. And, well, in it. Swift as my feet can carry me.
Oh my god, you guys can't break down a single door? God. The Flaming Fists are fucking pathetic.
Yeah, they're a little rough. Actually, there's no sense in both of us running in here.
Oh, did that guy die? Oh, did you save him? Nope.
No. Oh, no, I didn't get there.
I kind of forgot about him. I didn't realize it would trigger that until I opened that door. Okay, this is...
I like how the NPCs are actively getting buckets of water out of the well.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. There we are.
All's well that ends not as bad as it could have.
Come.
Time to press ahead.
Come.
I'm gonna go into turn base really quick if that's alright.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just gonna go get that chest from that room.
I forget what's even in there.
Some good stuff, but I also forget.
Just out of movement.
Yeah, that's okay.
The whole chest.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
whole thing.
We'll deal with this when we're not on fire.
Yeah.
And... okay, and we'll go downstairs. I keep forgetting to go to the mirror the next time we're in camp.
No.
Oh, you got
Shit.
this.
I was watching you.
That's funny.
Your boldness.
You want to talk about someone in this game that does something to me? Floor.
Real. Fucking real.
Yeah.
Now listen close, Fist. Duty calls. Drow have taken Grand Duke
I'm not
Older
ashamed.
Raven.
I'll admit.
God, that dress.
If
God,
my
the leg
eyes
slits.
and ears can be believed. Gauntlet, report to the man and send for reinforcements. We must find the Duke.
On your command, Counselor.
The rest of you, count the dead. Take word.
You do
of their
something. I'll do
sacrifice to this
whatever
city.
you want, Mama.
Yes,
I must ask again
Yes,
for your
ma'am.
aid. Please, rescue Ravengard from his drow captors. The council will reward you for your effort. May I trust you'll see it through? A champion indeed.
Yeah, because
He's the invisible force
Baldurian through and
holding
through.
Baldur's Gate together. Without him,
Esker
the
is?
city faces collapse.
Yeah.
Sick.
In fact, I fear that may have been the intention of those who abducted him.
He really wants to go home.
I fuck with that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And should your
How you doing,
courage
Esker?
falter,
I miss my wife,
remember the
Tails.
Duke's generosity.
I miss my house.
Pick up the drow trail with ease. I will seek reinforcements and join you when I can. Fist to work.
Okay, we don't really need anybody for the Jolt shooter for anybody because I'm not running Ranger this time, and I'm making myself not run Ranger this time.
I would fuck with the spell Sparkler.
The spell Sparkler?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When the wielder deals damage with a spell or cantrip, they gain 2 lightning charges. Yeah, okay. We'll grab that for you.
Preesh. Huge preesh.
And it is in your inventory. Also, I don't know what kind of necklace you're running. Would you like the blast pendant?
I sure would. I sure would like the blast pendant.
And
yippee, yippee, yippee.
I like wearing the infernal robe now that we can get it without doing terrible, inhumane things. With it, at level 4 with it, I get a 15 AC. Which is pretty good for right now. Alright.
I have never ever used the lightning blast, and now that I'm looking at it again, God, it's just kind of worse than just regular lightning charges.
Yeah. Yeah. But, I mean, Do we want to go check out the illegal store?
I sure would. Do you want the Vision of the Absolute?
Is it
the spear that blinds people?
You can throw it in my inventory. Gives me stuff to throw.
Okay. That's a crazy valuable thing to throw.
I mean, we pick it up.
It's true.
Nah. It's not like I leave it.
It's true, it just scares me on the inside. Okay, now I do a lot less melee damage, but that's okay. Not a lot less, like a little less.
Yeah. Is it over here? Yeah, it's over here.
Okay. Cool. You already loot everyone on the ground? Oh shit.
Yeah, I did.
Oh shit, my trident.
Oh.
Fuck.
Uh-oh. I forgot this cutscene was here.
Oh yeah. You know the password though. You're fine.
Yeah. That's right, we do have the password. I'm not used to
No traps, please.
Little serpent long shadow. Look at me. Do I look like I work for the fists? Okay. Oh, did you get your trident back?
I did. I forgot that I had left it way up high. Okay.
I am going down into the hatch.
I'm coming. Lae'zel, that is 100% your own fault.
What did she do?
Walked through fire.
Oh, yeah. A secret passage?
Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness. There, now I have the fast travel.
Useful and integral and important.
Yep. For a place you come to one time, maybe twice. The twice one is if you just feel like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I don't have enough money to buy all his fancy shit now.
Yeah.
I bet he gets more stuff when we're level 5 too, doesn't he?
Moth, Helta has a very, very important question.
Oh, is the movie Robots a trans movie? I hear it is. certainly the main character is trans. They make a bit about it. Or maybe that doesn't count as trans. I don't know, man. I make a bad representative of the community. You're asking the wrong queer.
I succeeded in finding like 2 traps.
Sorry, there's like so much food up here that I'm just sending to camp.
Yeah. Important to do that. I crashed out on Vapor about it.
How do you crash out on Vapor about it? Is Vapor adamantly like, no, it's not?
Hey. Free money. And we get the good store.
I mean, that's fair that you crash out. You say it's a trans movie and then he calls you your robot slur word? That's fucked up. That's messed up.
Wow.
Ah, whoops. I hate adding sausages to wares. Harold.
I imagine that's gonna be good for Lae'zel.
I haven't switched her to Dex, but she doesn't have a bad Dex, so if you are not using it, I would certainly give it to her.
It went to you for whatever reason.
Oh, it got in the way of my looting of food, so I just hit okay. Sorry.
Yeah. No,
Did you want it?
No, I don't want it.
Okay. I'm almost done stealing every sausage this place has. I'm filled with sausage. I got these meat sticks coming out of every hole on my outfit.
Anyway.
Huh?
Yeah. Yeah. What?
Should I go buy from the dude?
You have a pet artist? I do cut a fine figure. I'll take one.
Fuck yeah. I hate that you can't make him paint you something. You can only doom him forever or free him. Yeah. You can't be like, man, he promised me a painting. Give me a fucking painting.
Yeah. I want to trade. Actually, while I'm here, I'm also going to sell our stuff.
Sure, don't want me to do it?
My inventory too. Ooh, yeah. Let me peruse this stuff, see if there's anything. Hey, you have not made her a giant breaker.
No, but good to know.
This isn't the crossbow. I'm just looking at what the stuff is before I back out of the store.
Yeah.
I'll let you do it.
The giant breaker is pretty good. We love reeling.
Yeah, heavy hitter, reeling.
Heraldish doom.
And then there's great swords, longbow, a +1 maul, rupturing blade. Oh, that's a rapier.
Have you ever put the bard hat on Lae'zel?
No.
It kind of fucking slays.
Oh, this is what I was looking at. You were talking about for Lae'zel, there is the Titan string bow.
Oh, yeah. Wait, that one would actually probably be better than Herald.
Yeah, for me, it is 1,200 gold. So
hopefully
it'll be cheaper for you.
It's definitely gonna be expensive, but hopefully cheaper, yeah.
Yeah. And for the armor enjoyers, there is the Jolty vest.
Small hood.
It's medium armor though. Take 1 less slashing damage and counter shock. When the wearer takes damage while having lightning charges, the attacker must succeed a dex save throw or be shocked.
That's pretty sick.
Yeah, that might be right up your alley for what you're doing. Maybe.
I don't really have any dex, so it's kind of better for me to stick with heavy armor.
Yeah. All right. Let me give you this stuff so you can sell it.
Hold on, I'm trying to get into this fucking pit, this chest, and I'm breaking every lockpick I have on it.
Oh no.
There we are.
All this and that. All right.
Also, check out Lae'zel when you get a moment.
Everything is in your inventory. Oh, the hat. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it. Cowboy.
Cowboy, baby.
I'll talk to the artist and be like, no.
No one back home will ever believe this. I want to have a word.
Well, don't if you have the gold. My pet artist will make you a most heroical
I don't need a
likeness.
servant.
Follow the whining.
Dog, I come here for a painting.
I doubt you've got
they
that
said
kind of
you could
dosh
do
lying
that,
about.
and I'd like that. Nope, paint my portrait.
Oh, you can make him paint your portrait?
All right, so maybe I was fishing.
Well,
No fooling
he's
you.
just like, I can't work down here, forgive me.
Uh,
But when you say
Something I can help
when you
you
say
with?
I'm not helping you, I just want a
Of course.
painting.
Got some interesting stock for a friend.
He
of the family.
starts to call you a name, and then you kind of stand up and broaden your shoulders, and he's like, "Oh, forgive me, I'm sorry, I just can't work down here." Yeah, I sent you all the items I had.
Goody!
That were sellable. I should also just go ahead and just give you the money too.
That would help.
I have 1,200 gold on me.
Damn. All
So
right.
let me know. Oh wait, maybe I can send it to you. While you're, can I send it to you on your dialogue?
Yeah,
Yes, I can.
you
now
can.
have all the gold.
Cool. And you sent me everything you want sold?
Yeah, that was all the sellables I had on me without going to the camp.
Selling the Sword of Justice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's not needed, it's not needed. No sense in keeping it around.
Right. Sell a scroll of Thunderwave because I have Thunderwave.
Yep.
Nobody's using mage armor. That's kind of useful to have around. Grease bottles are cheaper than scrolls, so I will sell them.
And it's not like we need the scrolls.
Right.
I remember the first time coming down here and seeing all the oil on the ground. I'm like, oh, okay, I know exactly what's probably going to happen in here.
Okay, what do we fucking want?
I know you were talking about needing, or we were talking about Titan string bow for Lae'zel. I
Yeah.
didn't necessarily see anything in there good for me. But I didn't necessarily see anything in there that would be good for Shadowheart either.
There's the Jolty vest. Yeah, no one else is really collecting lightning charges, so
Yeah.
we probably won't buy that.
That's fine. I just knew there was like some good stuff in here worth looking at.
There's the
if we went about it this
gloves.
way. What's the gloves do?
There's a glove that gives you Hail of Thorns, and there's a glove that gives you advantage on sleight of hand, which is pretty handy and pretty cheap. 150 gold for advantage on every time I'm trying to lockpick shit? Sure, why not?
Yeah. I'm leaving my glove options open because in the area like you're going for the Githyanki stuff,
Mm-hmm.
there is, you know how we got the lightning charge gauntlets that I think you're wearing right now?
Yes.
There is a version in that area that you can acquire that does the same it does the same thing, but it deals fire damage.
That is pretty sick.
And I'm thinking about maybe mixing up a little next time we get an ASI or a feat, maybe doing a little tavern brawling.
That's pretty fucking awesome.
Too, just to mix things up and keep options open.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Trying to
Plus, they
think if
look
I want
fucking sick.
Hail of
And
Thorns.
sometimes
I do.
being unoptimized is worth the trip.
Oh, for sure. And then we have the Rupturing Blade, which is a finesse thing. I don't think any of us fucking need that.
No, if we had a bard in the party, it'd be one thing. I kind of don't think bards are very good in this game.
I love the
aesthetic and like the flavor and the interactions you can have.
No, the Bard Rogue build, the fucking hand crossbow machine gun.
Yeah.
I fuck with that shit. Okay, I've bought everything that I think is worth buying off of this man. Wait. I might buy the Jolt D vest for Lae'zel? No, I won't. I won't be doing that. She doesn't have any way to get those.
She's not doing anything with lightning charge. You're the only one doing something with lightning charges with the current setup.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Pop a short rest to get some HP back and go do another fight. We got about 40 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. What was... Cool. We're giving the Titan string bow to her, and then... We're just gonna keep the gloves of sleight of hand on us. And then... Give Lae'zel Hail of Thorns, because why not?
Action, not reaction.
And then I'm gonna quick save.
Do we want to go get the ooh, we still haven't went down under the inn and gotten the book. The Necronomicon.
Oh, yeah.
Believe me. Let's do that real quick.
Do I want to free this artist?
I want to see those traps in action.
I don't.
How much money do I have?
That's giving up a lot of gold on the front end.
600?
Is it 600?
Yeah.
At one point it was 1,000. Maybe it's charisma based too.
Oh, you talk it down. He's not charging 1,000.
Okay.
Fuck that shit. I would not buy him for 1,000 if I failed that roll. That is now his problem.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's the
I'm
same
gonna.
price I gave you before.
I'm gonna throw 600 at him.
Okay.
It's pretty easy to find money.
Yeah, he asked me first, and I say no, and he gets
you should at least know what you paid for.
He says
And
no.
assuming Lady Janeth still wishes to marry me after
Yeah, I got you.
Say, you couldn't.
And then he
spare
asked for an
a
extra
coin,
200, and I
could
tell
you?
him to go fuck yourself.
Ease the discomforts of the roads.
Don't put your load, buddy.
Until...
Oh, we missed a goblin out here.
Do we want to rob this place? They have the Abyss Beckoners. I don't think it's worth.
I don't think it's worth. In fact, I've already fast traveled back to Blighted Village.
Okay, yeah.
Wouldn't have predicted the
Hi,
love you
hello.
shared with our friend Lae'zel.
Hi.
You didn't consider
Shabby
it
wooden
beneath you.
doors.
Not too shabby.
Beneath me,
Not too shabby.
so above me, and standing at
Potion of
certain
sleep.
points.
Potion of healing.
That's enough. I get
An
the picture.
antidote.
Gods, do I get the picture?
And I'll just pick all this stuff up for selling.
Did you hear all that?
What did she say?
Lae'zel and Shadowheart are talking about Lae'zel fucking me.
Oh, I was not paying attention. I saw like sellables.
True. Money. After I wasted our money on being a decent person.
No, it's fine. Is it here? Yeah, it's down here.
Yeah. And then we get our favorite man that I still can't have even though I'm a magic user.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't like thunder.
Don't mind if I do.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. Oh yeah, there's extra fight in here.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot.
Oh yeah. The Necronomicon comes from a necromancer. He mans the dance.
Brain bamblage.
Brain blamblage. And
if it shows up when I hold Alt, I pick it up.
Damn.
No stone unturned.
What's that?
My wife. She's so smart and helpful.
Yeah.
What is that? It is the hat. Look at her.
Hat.
She's slaying.
Yeah. Off we go, off we go, off we go.
On the road again. Do you want to fight these guys now, or?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
No time to waste.
Oh. Oh yeah, I attacked to start that, so I'm saving for the other fight.
Wow, that has some range on it. Okay, good to know.
That did have some range on it. Holy. Okay.
Jesus Christ.
Please cease.
Yippee!
Oh, hey, now that you got the
How
Titan
much
string
farther
bow,
can I
I'm gonna
go?
just do this. Boop, boop. And have any more? Yep. Boop, boop. And all the fun arrows are now in her possession.
Let's go. Oh. Why am I surprised? What am I surprised of? There was nothing in there.
Was there not?
Nope.
Oh.
I opened it and it said, surprise! Nothing.
That might be worth a look.
Oh.
And it is.
Necronomicon.
Nomicon.
Just scrolls and gold. I'll put the gold in your pocket and just take the scrolls. Where are they?
Hmm. Strange. Alright.
Wish I had a bag of holding.
Okay.
Cool.
Open up.
Well, did you
grab
do
our friend
stuff for shovel?
Yep. But I don't know what to do with them. I guess I can give them to Gale.
Yeah, good. So we just gonna brute force this one with that shovel?
I mean, what does he do to help?
Nothing. I think it, depending on if you're a mage and like shovel like kind of likes you, he gives you the hints. But if you don't, if it's not your first time,
he just tells me wrong answers because he thinks it's funny.
An enchanted
Oh yeah, that's right. He does tell wrong answers.
Yeah. Magic leashed to a bauble. Almost sad.
I'll guide myself.
Yeah.
The magic is old and wavering, but you recognize it. The mirror is a thinking lock, hiding some secret. It seems some vain wizard took living magic
Eccentric
and twisted
wizard
it into a
bullshit. I will
forgotten
always call it
curio.
that.
And it is.
Speak your name. I do not know this name.
Yeah.
If you are known to my master, step forward and declare yourself an ally.
Sure.
What think you of the Zolkir known as Zask?
Fuck that guy.
Tell me, why might one use?
I'm just gonna go through it.
See anything in me? What would it be?
Nothing. You're magic. Do you want out?
No.
Okay.
This is my purpose.
Just thought I'd ask.
I know nothing else, but you cared to ask. No others ever did. Thank you. Be welcome.
Thanks.
All right, we ready for this fight?
Yeah. I'm ready.
There's no really sneaking in there.
No, not really. I guess I'm just gonna have Lae'zel shoot one of her fancy new arrows into it. Though, oh, actually, it would be really bad to do that.
What to do?
Cause he casts a big AOE thing.
Oh yeah.
Maybe if we just hide and just have Lae'zel show herself, he won't use it.
Or he uses the big AOE.
And
anyway.
we're all here.
And we're all here.
Yeah, I don't know what else to do though.
Just go in, I guess. See how far you can get in while sneaking.
Okay.
A laboratory. What mysteries are lurking
Got Lae'zel in.
here?
Nope.
Oh shit. It running up. Messed me up.
I accidentally I didn't unattach V, so she just showed up.
Okay, this is fine. We can work with this. And since he decided to run up here too, this is actually kind of better. We can deal with him quickly.
Okay. Yeah, that is very good for us.
Don't forget,
okay.
Lae'zel is not in initiative.
True.
With every breath, a purpose.
So, you can get a cheap shot on him if you want.
That is not a bad idea. Though, yeah, fuck it.
Try that new bow.
Yep. Just gonna brace. Oh, that took me out of initiative. Fuck. Or into initiative.
You stand up. Yeah. You
Good to
stood up
know.
do it. Yeah.
Man, I
Still
should have
fine.
waited till they were all up here to use Turn Undead.
They can't. Well, I'm coming up, so I can. Oh, there's still more. It's fine.
Oh yeah, I suppose
okay.
Shadowheart can try it too, can't she?
Yeah. Hi, folks. I am Esker, and we're raging. It's a rager here.
Boo.
Trying to see if. Okay. We'll just get right here. Boop, boop. Where are my options? I'm thinking.
Druid with the best joke of the night. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That was our time.
Right, Ranger. Oh wait. I have Toooodayyy.
Toooodayyy.
Yeah, never mind. Can't do what I was thinking about doing, so what I'm gonna do is miss.
Mm-hmm.
And not have enough spell slots, because I upcasted that to not do a spirit weapon.
Woof.
Woof. That's fine. We got heavy hitters here. Like this.
Bang. He's unturned. Turned. Also, unless the final hit on Ilyn is radiant or a crit, he will not die.
Okay. We have the technology for that.
We fucking do.
Does he just hang out at like 1 HP?
Yeah, he'll just keep bouncing back.
Why did he do it there? I guess because we focused melee so hard on him?
Nope, that's crazy. That's fucking crazy.
Okay.
Nope.
Oh yeah, I see it. Legendary action, not dead yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure what to do.
Just take a hit. Get some hits in. The second it's Esker's turn again, I'm just gonna jump over there to him and keep right at it. Keep the pressure on.
I'm gonna let this guy get an attack on me and try and give him disadvantage.
Immune to necrotic, bone shield.
Yeah, no damage,
okay,
but
but the effects still okay. Yeah, I was curious if the effects still work.
Die! How dare you touch me?
I'm immobile. I think undead skeletons should count as corpses for first exchange.
Kind of fair.
But that's just me.
Hell yeah.
Double team. Love to see it. How's everyone on HP? Everybody's okay. I'll save that. I've got 2 level 1 slots left. Alright,
Get him!
Okay. Anyway.
Wow, that is a money move. Oh shit! All right. Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Angie.
Ah.
Okay. Well. Thanks for just helping us out.
Forgot about that shit.
Missed. It always fucking misses. Anyway.
I am fury. I am death.
Yeah. I guess I'm just gonna go take care of this guy because I don't have any way to deal radiant.
Yeah, not with her. What was that?
I explode. I have the hammer of explode.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, I'll wrap this up.
Will you?
Oh yeah. I was hoping for a crit right there.
Yeah, that would be pretty sick.
Cool. Yeah, I was hoping for a crit so it'd look cool. Anyway. No. There.
Little help, please.
Oh.
He set his own trap. What a dick.
No.
A spot of healing will help.
No, you get up. We need you.
Yes, please. Get me out of fire. I'm still on fire, so I'm gonna go back down. I'll need a nap. Oh wait.
I'm gonna magic missile him just to get him down.
I have a bottle. Shadowheart has a bottle of holy water on her.
Oh, nice. Should I not hit him then?
Yeah, oh yeah, hit him. If it'll kill him, it'll kill him. But if I can stay alive until I can move again, because she's gonna go back down because she has no heals.
There we are. Here, I can get her a healing potion.
Do you have one on you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just so she doesn't go back down from taking burn damage.
Right.
Okay. That's what we needed. Because now she can throw, on her next turn, she can throw the holy water. So I don't need to swing at him again.
No, don't touch him.
Look, if it had been a crit, it'd have been really cool.
It woulda.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Okay. Okay, it went for you. Okay. Throw. Holy water.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
All right. W. That was good. Would you like a poisoner ring?
No. That shit sucks.
Okay. All right. Well, put it in your pocket to sell anyway.
Fair.
I'll keep that scroll because funny, and I'll give you a book to read because you look like you need it.
And I will be taking another book to read.
Minor hindrance.
Oh yeah, the braces of defense are in here.
Yeah, that shit's good.
I need these. I forgot those were in here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, makes me. I now have 17 AC. W.
Hey, could a high wisdom person walk in this room, please? Preferably Shadowheart, but either of you. Hey!
The barbarian found it.
Yeah, you've got advantage on that shit.
All right, good luck. We're getting out of here.
All right.
Shouldn't have wished to live in more interesting times.
Look, a book.
The book is locked tight with no visible keyhole. Only an oval recess in the cover's mouth. You try to examine the book, but the longer you stare, the more those piercing amethyst eyes draw you in. Beneath the allure, you feel the faintest echo of torment. There is great power in this book, but also great suffering.
A cursed book? How obvious. Whoever opens it deserves the fate that befalls them.
Well, what if I'm built different, Lae'zel? What if I'm built better?
Okay.
You don't see a tentacle and you get a little excited?
Oh, damn.
The book's pull is irresistible.
Ah!
You feel changed, bettered for having opened it. Suddenly you are capable of anything. Felling mountains, darkening suns, conversing with the dead. So much promised. But what is sought in return? Glyphs shift gently before your eyes. Words slip into your mind, onto your lips, forming words you don't understand. And something is trying to reply.
Just real quick.
Yeah, okay. Good luck.
Thanks. I don't need it.
I'm built different. You don't need it?
Didn't happen. Don't know what you're talking about. Didn't see that. A 7 is good. A 7 is great.
The glyphs warm impatiently.
Yeah.
The book wants you to turn the page to delve deeper. It's hungry.
Okay. Whatever you gotta tell yourself to sleep at night.
What do you
The
want,
glyphs
book?
seem to burn your inner eye, outraged at your denial. Within the pages, you feel a feral thrashing. Living magic, driven mad by what it was used for. Necromancy. The magical energies of all living things were stolen, corrupted, and sealed in this vile book. It wants
I don't need
someone
what?
to share in its insanity.
Didn't need luck. What the hell?
Who needs luck? Yeah, who needs luck when I have 3 inspiration? The DM loves me.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy, why don't you chill the fuck out?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Was that
the voices
how many we got left after that?
The
1 or 0.
1 or 0.
I think 0.
Seems to grow still and
We're
quiet,
good.
like a soothed beast.
Oh no, gotta turn the page.
Yeah, but it's fine now.
Nothing. Just old parchment covered in arcane
I
symbols.
trust you. I believe in you.
The magic sleeps.
I shake it. Wake up!
The heavy cover thumps shut with a strange finality.
Welcome back from ads. I don't know why that ad ran. I saw it out of the corner of my eye, and then it was just like, oh, going.
You've seen much of the book, but its most powerful secrets are guarded by indecipherable glyphs. Without a key, they may be locked away forever.
Okay.
I'll take that.
Well, W.
Twisted binding?
Oh yeah, there's more chests in here.
Oh, forbidden knowledge. Cool. I'm now a little better at wisdom.
Boots have seen everything.
I'm a little wiser.
A little wiser? Not a rusted key.
The wisdom I learned was always open books.
Oh yeah.
They got free spells in them. Who doesn't want to talk to dead people?
Yeah, of course. Well, do you think this would be a good time to wrap up for the day?
This would be a grand old time to wrap up right after we see what we think of a stuffed bear.
Oh yeah, shit.
A young cave bear.
I'm smart.
Killed
I know
and
things.
stuffed before its teeth were fully grown.
Rawr.
Rawr.
Too young to have put up a fight.
Oh, it automatically solves it for your allies.
This is an
Okay.
embarrassment.
A young cave bear, killed and stuffed before its teeth were fully grown.
I took away the fun of it all. I figured I would fail it. It's a wisdom roll. My wisdom is 10.
So impressive as trophies.
All right, yeah. Seems like a decent place
Yep. Don't forget to save.
to call it good. I will.
That way you don't have to do all those rolls again.
I'm sorry I used up all of our fucking inspiration tonight.
We'll get them. We'll get them back. We'll get them back.
All right.
Let me take you goobers to this screen.
We
and
love
turn
this
on
screen.
A little bit of, yeah, I love seeing moth in a dumpster.
Right where I belong.
Yeah. And let me close the game so my computer will quit being angry.
And we'll be listening to Inertia.
And quit. And quit. Cool. Okay, real quick, guys. I have a movie night tonight in my Discord. If you would like to come watch a movie with us, you're more than welcome to join if you're not already in. We're watching the 1995 Ghost in the Shell movie.
And I have never seen it before, so I'm pretty excited.
Yes, it's very good. We only have the dub. Some people are weird about that. I'm not weird about that. We're watching the dub. It's the only one that I can get my hands on.
Valid. I'm weird about it, but I wouldn't like. I won't be like, oh well, now I'm not watching it. You know?
Yeah, no. It's good, but that's just what we got. That's what I got my hands on when you use the ultimate streaming service that is your friend's play server.
So true.
But yeah, if you're not a part of the Discord and want to come watch a movie, join the Discord and come watch a movie. We're going to be watching the movie at 6 p.m. Central Daylight Time. So in about 2 hours. So just a heads up. We're gonna end stream, have a little 2-hour break, and then I will be in the Discord. I will ping the Discord when I start the movie around 6 p.m. So just a heads up on that, and that is all I got going. Moth, you got anything going on?
I got very little going. Tomorrow I will not be streaming. I know 3 days of streaming. I've spoiled you guys. How will you be able to live without it? But on Monday I will be back with... What do I play on Mondays? Fuck if I remember.
Who knows? Not me.
I genuinely have forgotten. But we'll be playing something. We'll be hanging out. And I'll be happy to see anyone who can make it. Captain, we got a few options. Do you have anyone you're interested in raiding?
Who are you thinking?
I've got open right now. I have Iris the Moth, who I very rarely raid, but it's her birthday. We have Jelly Prinsect, and Miss Cakes.
I like Iris, and I've never raided into Iris. Let's do that.
Hell yeah, let's do that. All right. I think I've raided her only once or twice before, so this will be actually really exciting. We love supporting the Bug Homies. She's a friends of many of our bug loves that you know and collect.
All right. Guys, on my end, here's a raid message. If you're not subbed and want to...
Me when I can't spell.
Me when I can't spell. If you want to plug in your own emotes or whatever you want, do that. If you're subbed and want to use my emotes, there you go. Do a mix and match, whatever you want. Again, one more time, I have a Discord. We're watching a movie tonight at 6 p.m. Central Daylight Time. If you're free and want to hang out, come and hang out. If not, enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and I will see you for stream Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Time.
And that's it. Bye, everyone. Get out of our house. We're about to French. We're about to make out. We're about to make a sandwich.
And I'm sending them from me now.
Samesies.